C-417. Mystic Realm Warp. Stella awoke the following day to a voice as her body was being shaken from side to side by two tiny hands. Master. Stella groaned as she was pulled out of dreamland. It had been an unpleasant experience sleeping under the 9 moons ever since Ashlock took on Desolation Chi, but that had changed with the recent addition of Harmony Dao. Instead of unsettling nightmares, she now experienced dreams that played with the concepts of duality and being on the edge of making big decisions. It was unsettling and stressful in a different type of way. People meditated to clear their minds of distractions and noise so they could focus on the heavens, whispers. These dreams were much the same, yet the lessons they taught were less about gaining greater power and more about growing as a person and seeing both sides to everything. Wake up, Master, Jasmine said. A sea of stars can be drowned out by a blinding light. Only in the darkness can we reveal the true light within us, Stella murmured as she tried to hide under the covers. Master, Jasmine grumbled, sounding fed up. What nonsense are you sprouting? As your master, I must pass on words of wisdom, Stella said before yawning and waving Jasmine off. Give me 5 more minutes. How can you be so lazy? I'm not lazy. I just hate the mornings. Stella retorted and tried to roll away. Are all spatial cultivators like this? Jasmine complained. I thought Ashlock liked sleeping too much, but I assumed it was because he's a tree. Now I'm having second thoughts. Sleep is good for the soul, Stella said, slothfully stretching her limbs under the cover and enjoying the warmth. You should try it more. Do you know what else is good for the soul, Master? What? The mystic realm, which opens in 5 minutes. Stella opened her eyes and winced at the sunlight pouring into her room. It was already morning. 5 minutes, you said. Yes, Jasmine said with a hint of relief. Perfect. Stella closed her eyes again, smiling. That's just how long I need. Master, I don't think you understood what I said. Jasmine returned to rocking the bed. It opens in 5 minutes. Yeah, so. Stella tilted her head and finally looked at her annoyed disciple. It only takes me 5 seconds to get ready and go up there. 5 seconds. I don't believe it. Jasmine crossed her arms and gave her an unimpressed look. Oh, I'm going to wipe that expression right off your face. Watch this. Stella's bed rotated until it was standing upright. The duvet fell at her feet, and she simply stepped over it. Raising her hands to either side, spatial rings piled up neatly on her bedside table flew, and there was a satisfying clink as they stacked themselves on her fingers. Silver light enveloped her as the white silk pajamas she had gotten recently were replaced in a flash by her usual getup, including her tattered cult cloak that honestly needed to be washed. The phantom veil amulet that hid her cultivation materialized on her neck, relieving the room of her ever-present soul pressure. Ether flames flickered across her body, flattening her bed hair and fixing up her clothes as swapping outfits using a spatial ring on a moving body was quite challenging to perfect, and she didn't have the mental energy for those mental calculations right now. I'll be heading out now, Stella said casually as the bed fell back to its former position and the duvet and pillow were returned to their rightful places. She glanced over her shoulder at her disciple while feeling smug. See that? I got ready in 5 seconds, as promised. You must be so impressed. Stella's smugness faltered due to her disciple's expression. Instead of a look of awe, Jasmine seemed amused. What's so funny? Jasmine smirked. That was a more effective way to get you out of bed than I thought. You're so easy sometimes, Master. Stella frowned. What do you mean? I always knew you could get out of bed in 5 seconds. That's hardly impressive compared to other things you are capable of. But if I make it a competition or question your abilities, it's crazy how quickly you transition away from being a sloth. So you tricked me. Jasmine shrugged. It got you out of bed, didn't it? Stella glanced at her perfectly made bed, which looked so inviting, and felt a pain in her heart at the blissful 5 extra minutes of sleep Jasmine had robbed her of. You, she said, pointing at her disciple, will regret tricking me. How? Take the ethereal route by yourself. Stella snapped her fingers, and she vanished into the ether, leaving Jasmine behind. That deceitful little menace, she huffed in annoyance but couldn't help but crack a smile. What a smart girl. If she can do that to me, she will be able to take over my role in meetings sooner than I thought. Despite respecting Jasmine's abilities, the little girl still needed to be punished for using such techniques on her own master. Stella used the ether that was present within the ethereal root network to quickly escape Ash's inner world and reappear at the base of his trunk. A large gathering of the Ashfallen sect's inner circle was already waiting in the shade of Ash's vast canopy, which was shielding them from the raging storm. It was a dark winter morning, with the dense clouds overhead blocking what little sunlight there would usually be. So, the mountain peak was illuminated and heated by the fire affinity offspring to the northern flank of the peak. Beautiful orange flames danced across their scarlet canopies, and motes of fire whirled through the air as they were whisked southwards by the fierce gale. Yet despite the turbulent surroundings, everyone present seemed unfazed by the wind, fire, rain, or cold. They did not shiver, nor were their clothes rustling. The group stood in a vague circle, calmly chatting with their hands behind their backs or to their sides as soul flames of varying colors flickered across their bodies to shield them from the elements. Morning Stella, did you sleep well? Stella stretched her back and barely managed to contain a monstrous yawn. Morning Tree, I slept quite well, and you? How are things? The northern border quietened down this morning from that weird rush of monsters over the last few days. It seems like a whole faction of monsters got forced out all at once, and there's now a brief quiet before the storm. It's nice to get a break, but I used my free time last night to start work on Erebus. Erebus, the void bastion we are taking to visit the Silver Spires. Yeah, overnight, I devoured as many monsters as I could to gather enough credits. I mean energy that I needed to expand the bastion to be 100 meters long. There's now a small team of Mudcloaks working to make it look as intimidating as possible per my design. Where is it? Stella asked, looking around. Under the mountain, Ash said. They had a giant hangar down there where they are working on another large project. Stella yawned. Oh, I see. Well, I look forward to it. I assume our outfits are also being made. I think so. Sebastian went to handle that last night, but I was too busy to check up on him. Master. Stella glanced over her shoulder at Jasmine, who emerged from the ethereal root nestled in a secluded area near Ash's trunk. What's up? That was mean, Jasmine pouted. You even told me to get you out of bed. I told you to get me out of bed right before the mystic realm opened. Stella hugged the girl, and ruffled her hair. You robbed me of 5 precious minutes. 5 minutes is right before. Jasmine protested, but Stella just smiled. It was fun teasing her, and the girl's arrival seemed to have drawn everyone's attention, and only now they noticed that Stella had also arrived. Not that she blamed them, as she was wearing her phantom veil amulet to mask her presence and made no effort to draw attention to herself. It was too early in the morning to deal with people. Love this story. Find the genuine version on the author's preferred platform and support their work. With Jasmine here, I think we can start. Stella felt Ash's presence expand to encompass the entire peak, and everyone looked up at the canopy in unison as Ash's voice echoed in their minds. The mystic realm is about to open. Many, if not all of you, have experienced it before. However, this time will be different. From Ash's upper branches that were shrouded in mystery and arcs of divine energy, pearlescent fruits that looked like palm-sized crystals floated down into everyone's hands. Stella inspected the strange fruit. Its texture almost felt like glass, and the colors of its skin seemed to shift slightly as she rotated it. This is a mystic realmorm fruit. They are extremely chi-intensive to grow, but for everyone's safety, I deemed it necessary to grow at least one for everyone. It's no secret that the mystic realm contains great rewards but an equal amount of danger. There's no telling where you will end up, so this is the solution to reduce the number of deaths after the Redclaw incident. A wave of murmurs spread between the group at the mention of the Redclaw youths murdering each other over a flower. By eating this fruit, you will immediately leave a pocket realm and return here. Stella saw flashes of surprise and relief on everyone's faces. They all knew that as cultivators, great leaps in power didn't come without risks. But the mystic realm had been especially dangerous with how opaque it was and how you had to survive in whatever realm you were in for an entire month. I wish I had this last time. Stella mused as she reflected on the Azure Clan's tournament realm, where she had gotten stuck. Actually, no. If I had this fruit back then, I would have used it and unknowingly deprived myself of encountering the Ether Origin Stone. Great opportunity doesn't always make itself known on the surface. She weighed the fruit in her hand and frowned. This is quite the conundrum. Having the fruit guarantees my safety, but the pressure of death helps a cultivator exceed their limits and achieve greatness. I apologize, Ashlock, but I don't wish to accept this. Stella glanced up at Grand Elder Redclaw, who held out the fruit. May I ask why? Ash asked while using telekinesis to take back the fruit. Safety breeds weakness and carelessness. Access to such an escape method will make me bold against threats I'd usually handle cautiously. While that fruit does offer an exit, it's not foolproof. I'd have to eat it first, which takes time. I understand this may sound crazy or backward, but I believe knowing I have such a fruit in my spatial ring will lead to my death. The man's tone was stern, and his resolve was unwavering. If I die, I die. That is how the heavens wanted it. I see, Ash replied. That's not a perspective I thought of. Grand Elder Redclaw bowed in respect. Ashlock, you are a wise one but also a spirit tree. As a being rooted in place, unable to flee, being risk-averse is understandable. He straightened up and slowly looked around. But I ask the talented people here, how many times have you faced death, overcame it, and come out stronger than ever on the other side? Meanwhile, how many times have you experienced a breakthrough in understanding the safety of your home? Never, Stella thought, and a powerful feeling from the Grand Elder's passionate speech stirred inside her. Memories of all she had been through, all the times she had almost died, flashed in her mind. Looking back, there had been a reward at the end of every trial. A new technique, insight, affinity, friend, and more. One does not grow by sitting at home surrounded by formations and doing the same monotonous routine. True growth in power and wisdom comes from experiencing and shaping the world around oneself. That is what makes the mystic realm such a miracle. The Redclaw Grand Elder bowed once again to Ash. It's the ultimate training ground for one to fight for one's life in a distant realm and the Ashfallen sect's greatest treasure. Without it, the explosive growth of everyone here wouldn't have been possible. Well said, Grand Elder. Douglas slapped the man on the shoulder with a big grin, but I'll be keeping hold of mine. While those shards in the fog seemed to call to those capable of challenging them, my cultivation far outranks my techniques. If I get caught in a fight with a star core beast, it's over for me, and I have way too much to live for. Yeah, feel me. Besides, I'll likely have to leave the mystic realm partway through to check up on the Mudcloaks and the new city I'm building. Stella looked between the two men. One a seasoned warrior born for war and the head of a now major family. The other was a rogue cultivator turned construction worker who was also a king. They had both had tough lives filled with fighting and death, yet their perspectives couldn't be more different. Neither is wrong. Grand Elder Redclaw and Douglas's priorities are just different. Stella furrowed her brows. Was it the Harmony Tao poisoning the air, or had the dreams simply opened her mind to this phenomenon that had been happening all around her, but she had simply never taken notice? Cultivators were supposed to be arrogant. Years, decades, or maybe even centuries spent listening to heaven's whispers, having the power to alter reality and make people kneel at their feet, gave them a god complex. It made them believe that anything they said and any opinion they held should be the only one. Yet what she saw happening before her seemed to transcend that. That's fair enough. Grand Elder Redclaw returned the pat on Douglas's back and grinned. How could I survive without your delicious home-brewed spirit wine if you got stomped on by some big earth turtle? Elder Mo nodded profusely at the Grand Elder's side. He's right. I wouldn't miss this old bastard, but your spirit wine. How could I live without it? The Grand Elder's eye twitched, and the flames flickering across his skin flared up. Who are you calling an old man, and why are you still clutching the mystic realmorp fruit? Hand it back, or are you afraid of death? Elder Mo heartily laughed and stored the fruit away. I'll be keeping this. Don't give me that look. How else will I steal an inheritance from under your nose and escape if not for this? I think it will prove quite useful. Stella found herself once again looking at the fruit in her hand. She wanted to follow the Grand Elder's lead in giving it up, but a part of her still hesitated. After all, this fruit would lead her back to Ash, and she didn't plan to die. But if I want to reach the nascent soul realm in a single trip, I must push myself to the limit. This fruit might hold me back. Okay, enough of this, Ash said, silencing the group. Younger members in attendance and those who will be on the convoy to the Silver Spire's peak must keep hold of their fruits. That's non-negotiable. Everyone else is free to do with them as you please. Ash paused his speech, and everyone could feel a change in the air. Now stand back. I will be opening the mystic realm shortly. The Redclaw Grand Elder, Elder Mo, Margaret, Brent, and even Amber, alongside a large group of Redclaws that hadn't dared to say a word in the presence of the other members, stepped back to form a wide semicircle around Ash's trunk. This gave Stella a clear view of everyone in attendance. Besides herself, Jasmine, and the already mentioned Redclaws, Douglas and Elaine were at the back. Standing beside those two was Diana, who smiled at Stella. Coiled around the demoness's legs was Kata, who was far larger than Stella ever remembered the Midnight Ink Lindworm being. Looking to the left, she caught the gazes of the two Silver Spires, Sebastian and Riker. There were also members from Nightshade City, such as Elysia Duskwalker, along with members from the other families. It's good to see the members of the Blightbane family look as gloomy as ever, Stella noted as she glanced at their Grand Elder. Like the rest of the Blightbane family, the man had hair as dark as rotting wood and eyes like fading embers. Dark maroon spirit flames that reeked of death danced along his shoulders and down a staff he held. Tree, don't you think it's crazy how quickly the sect has grown? Stella murmured under her breath, I'm starting to lose track of who some of these people are. Ash chuckled in her mind, whether you know them or not, it doesn't matter. What I care about is expanding our numbers and increasing our strength as quickly as possible. Unlike more traditional sects, we are not limited as much by resources. As the Grand Elder rightly pointed out earlier, I make miracles happen. With that, a celestial fog filled with shards of glass that seemed like mirrors into other worlds ballooned out of nothingness to fill the ample space the cultivators had left. Good luck everyone, and don't die. Stella watched everyone excitedly dive into the fog and felt their presence vanish one by one. A part of her wished Ash didn't share the mystic realm with so many people, as she missed the simpler days, but on the other hand, this only upped the competition and fired her up. I'll be back soon, and when I do, I swear I will be in the nascent soul realm, Stella said and strode toward the mystic realm. Don't push yourself too hard, and remember to use the mystic realmorph fruit if you encounter danger, Ash warned like a concerned dad. His words made her smile at the irony of it all. He was the reason she needed to push so hard in the first place. Entering the celestial fog, everything seemed to fall away. The floor was gone, it was just her and the innumerable tiny worlds to choose from. Closing her eyes, she breathed in deeply. Her spiritual senses spread, and she tried to find a shard that was calling to her. The spatial chi ones, while appealing, didn't seem quite right. She searched far and wide until she came across not one but two options. Strangely, it wasn't the ether chi realm that was calling out to her. It simply existed and felt compatible. It was the second one that drew her attention. What's this feeling? Stella moved quickly through the celestial fog as if afraid she would lose it. The shard in question radiated spatial chi of the monarch realm level. But that wasn't even the strangest part. The shard was utterly black, giving no hints of where it led, and even stranger, it didn't appeal to her affinity. It was calling out specifically to her bloodline. Stella clenched the mystic realmorph fruit in her hand. Her bloodline didn't exactly have the best reputation, and there were far more people out there who wanted her dead than those who would go through all this effort to set up a meeting with a crestfallen. Okay. Good, she said after patting her head to ensure Maple was there. Now, if I were an evil mastermind trying to capture a crestfallen, what type of trap would I have planned? I assume they want me alive if it's my bloodline knowledge they are after, lest they can harvest and use it like Vincent. In that case, her mind wandered as she began digging through her spatial rings to extract fruits. Soul Dominion fruit. I should have complete dominion over my soul after eating it for a while. If I remember right, I can even fracture my soul and temporarily put it into items without risk of permanent soul damage. Stella began munching on that fruit while pulling out another. If I combine this with the soul protection fruit that protects my soul from external influences and attacks, that should cover me for getting mind controlled. Now chowing down two fruits, Stella was left with a third potential option. The void protection fruit. Eating it consumed a significant amount of chi but produced a barrier of void that was practically guaranteed to block one attack. Using it would increase her safety. But it would also set back my cultivation. Stella made the tough call to dismiss the fruit and go in with her mind protected. Phew, here goes nothing. Taking a deep breath, she reached out and clasped the shard. No pain, no gain, right? Her world rippled, and she was pulled into the shard. However, nothing could have prepared her for who awaited her arrival on the other side. It was a man she hadn't seen in quite some time. Stella took a step back as her eyes narrowed. To think it's you who would call me. Now, the figure partially obscured by fractured space said, I haven't come here to fight. Please, take a seat, Stella crestfallen. C-418. Fractured space. Stella took the offered seat. Like the rest of this place, it wasn't material. Instead, it was made from a gravity well stuck in a fractured vector of space. I'm curious, Stella said as she began to munch on the mystic realmorph fruit. She could feel its mystical energies reaching through her body and gently caressing her soul. How did you call out to my bloodline? A chuckle echoed through the space, how indeed. The answer is more simple than you would think. A sphere of liquid blood wobbled through the air and paused before Stella. It pulsed as if alive, and she felt an attachment toward it for some reason. You left some of your blood behind when we last met. I gathered it and used it to call you here. Stella eyed the sphere of her blood with skepticism. Really? All it took to call me here was some of my gathered blood. Don't look at this as mere blood. To mortals, blood is indeed mundane. It's simply a liquid flowing through their bodies, keeping their organs functioning and their flesh suits warm. To most cultivators, this is also true. However, through studies conducted by blood cultivators and knowledge gleaned from ancient records, we know that blood holds so much more for a special few. Yourself is one such case. A man missing both of his arms who had been partially obscured by the fractured space stepped out into full view. His expression was stoic as he continued. You are a bloodline holder. Eons ago, during the first cycle after the origins were enslaved by the heavens and reality was stabilized, the beings we know as monsters today had not yet been corrupted by demonic chi. They were like you and I, just with different bodies and ways of cultivation. Elder Vortexian of the Azure clan calmly sat opposite Stella and met her gaze with tranquility. His cold eyes did not flicker with rage, greed, or amusement. His tone was also neutral, as if he were reciting a script. The fractured space around him converged into replacement arms. So what makes my blood special? Stella asked with a smugness that made her seem to be testing the man's knowledge rather than outright asking. After all, this was information she should probably know. The unification between all races gave birth to generations of continually stronger children than their parents. Entire sects were founded on the art of breeding superior vessels for cultivation, as everyone wanted their family name to go down in history and stand the test of time. It was believed that whichever family or sect could create the perfect specimen for cultivation would be able to raise a god. A being that could stand above all else. Elder Vortexian paused as he stared into Stella's eyes. You were the result of that. The crestfallen bloodline belongs to the one destined to defy the heavens. I didn't believe the legends, but after witnessing you repair the origin stone, I was convinced it was true. Stella somehow managed to contain her surprise and play it cool. Oh, such deep knowledge is rare to find these days. I wonder how you learned of this. She casually asked while munching on the mystic realmorp fruit. It was unknown what Elder Vortexian's intentions were with luring her here, and she had already caused Maple to devour both of his arms, so she doubted they were on good terms. All I need to do is buy time until I've finished eating this. I just need to keep him talking. After our last meeting, you could say my life was over. Elder Vortexian said simply, as if he were talking about the weather. With the death of Heavenly King Cepheus confirmed, Azure Clan's spatial peak was facing a rapid decline. The one saving grace keeping spatial peak relevant was the Ether Origin Stone. His eyes flickered to Stella's head where Maple was sleeping, which your pet Worldwalker ate after you repaired it. Learning of the Origin Stone's disappearance and my mismanagement of the Outer Sect Disciple Tournament, with respect to my strength, I was spared death and merely cast out by the Azure Clan. However, with my stalled cultivation, being cut off from the Azure Clan's resources was practically a death sentence. So you want revenge? Stella asked and was surprised when the armless elder shook his head. I did initially. I lost control over my emotions and, during my rage, sacrificed my infant soul to create this pocket realm. Once I calmed down, I devoted myself to research and studied history until my consciousness crumbled from exhaustion. All to find and kill you. For the first time in the meeting, his stoic expression could not conceal his anger. However, it was gone in a passing moment. Well, I'm sitting here still alive, so I assume something changed. Stella said. The man rose from his chair. Killing you will never reverse what has been done. The Azure Clan will never take me back, but more importantly, I don't want them to anymore. Oh, Stella had no idea where the man was going with this. It was a fascinating turn of events. Elder Vortexian opened his palm, and the space between his fingers cracked like shattered glass. You see, after being cast out of the Azure Clan, my cultivation advanced for the first time in centuries. In my rage, I learned a new Tao for spatial affinity. I stopped wasting my focus on writing guides and nurturing the future youth for spatial peak. Instead, my comprehension of this new way to use spatial affinity skyrocketed the more obsessed I became with finding and killing you. Eventually, my rage toward you lessened, but I desired more power. So, I turned my hatred toward the Azure Clan. I never realized how much a broken origin stone held me back and how much time I had wasted on helping a clan that was all too happy to throw me out. I once again became obsessed with imagining how much death and destruction I could cause. How many cities I could tear down into oblivion. He closed his hand into a fist, and reality cried out as it was annihilated. Stella, it took me falling down to the bottom of the well to finally look up and see the stars. You cut the chains that held me up and, in turn, saved me. You're welcome. Stella tilted her head in confusion. This was the most bizarre and roundabout way of being appreciated she had ever experienced. Is this what happens when a monarch realm cultivator is pushed too far? He's totally broken, Stella thought as she glanced around at the fractured world. Before, she had taken it in at face value, but with her knowledge of how reality liked to hold itself together, to create a realm like this where there was nothing but destruction showed just how enraged he must have been. He might have gone supernova if he hadn't confined his rage to this pocket realm. Stella kept chewing. A monarch realm was dangerous, but Elder Vortexian had the aura of a dead man walking. He only wants to watch the world burn for what has been done to him. Stella, I called you here to ask a favor. Huh. Stella paused eating the last of the fruit and stopped glancing around. Why me? Because we are more similar than you will ever know. Elder Vortexian smiled. While my sights aren't set as high as tearing down the very heavens, I would be honored to walk the path of destruction in your wake. Stella took a moment to process what the hell that Elder Vortexian had just said. A monarch realm cultivator who used to lord over a peak in the Azure clan that supposedly dominates the 8th layer of creation wants to follow me. Stolen from its rightful author, this tale is not meant to be on Amazon. Report any sightings. Stella hummed as she looked Elder Vortexian up and down. I have plenty of monarch realms at my beck and call. What could an armless castaway like you possibly offer me? Stella had the last piece of the mystic realmwarp fruit between her teeth and was ready to clamp down. I might have read the situation wrong, but if he is willing to do as I say, I should push this as far as possible. However, Elder Vortexian didn't seem angered by her words. It only seemed to fan the flames of conviction. If the Azure clan is destroyed, I offer you my soul and this pocket realm. That I promise on my name. This pocket realm. Stella tried to look as unimpressed as possible as she pretended to look around again. I have access to hundreds of pocket realms. Such a thing doesn't sweeten the deal. However, your soul, now that sounds delectable. For Ash, that is. I have no idea what I'd do with a random monarch realm cultivator's soul. But my very own pocket realm that's this cool looking. Hell yes. Then, as for my favor. Hold on, if you are planning to die after this is done, I have one request before hearing you out. Stella held out her empty palm. Give me all your cultivation resources. I'll take your weapons and such upon your death. Elder Vortexian hesitated as he stared at Stella's hand. Have you got cold feet now, or was the promise of your soul a lie? Stella gestured with her fingers for him to hurry up. Believe it or not, I have places to be. Are we doing this or not? Elder Vortexian summoned a few of his spatial rings and conjured an arm of fractured space to dangle them over her palm. My favor is your assistance in eradicating the Azure clan, he said, dropping them with a clink. This is everything I have. Everything you have. That will suffice, I suppose. Stella stowed them away and hid her giddy excitement. I just scammed a monarch realm cultivator out of all his cultivation resources. There's bound to be something in these spatial rings that will help me reach nascent soul realm before the month is over. Now, as for this favor, Stella crossed her arms, how do we go about eradicating the Azure clan? This was the hard part. Everyone in the Ashfallen sect strong enough to fight against powerhouses on the next layer of creation would be devoted to fighting the beast tide rather than assisting some monarch realm cultivator enact their revenge. I would invite him down to the 9th layer of creation to assist in eradicating the beast tide, but that might shatter whatever image he has in his mind of me. Actually, can someone from a higher layer of creation even venture down to a lower level without inviting heaven's wrath? Elder Vortexian pondered for a moment before replying, I was hoping you would assist me personally. Stella scoffed, absolutely not. The Azure clan isn't worth my time. I would also be squished like a bug. A Star Core realm cultivator trying to fight an entire clan. Didn't they have people called Heavenly Kings who were in the Sovereign of Reality's realm? What about your father? Could he assist? Stella looked at him as if he were a fool. No. No good. Huh. Elder Vortexian frowned. I thought he would be personally interested in eradicating the Azure clan. Why would he be? Because of the divine fragment. Wait, what? There's a divine fragment. Stella recalled what she had been told. Senior Lee had given the divine fragment to Ash when they first met. It turned him from a demonic spirit tree into a demi-divine that had unlimited cultivation. However, he will become a true god if he collects all the divine fragments. Who has it? Stella asked with a little more urgency in her tone than she would have liked. But this was important. The Heavenly King of Dream Peak. He's in close door cultivation, and I know where. Help me destroy the peak, and I will lead your father to him. The era of ascension has yet to begin, so moving between the layers is nearly impossible, but someone of your father's status should be able to traverse the void. He looked up at Maple, After all, he gave you a pet world walker. Stella stood up as she felt her facade slipping. It was all too much for her to handle. This has been productive, Elder Vortexian. I'll inquire my father regarding this matter, and I'll send people to assist in due course. Wait, before you go, take this. Elder Vortexian passed her a strange-looking artifact with telekinesis. This is a dimensional geolocator. Use it when sending people over. Very well. Stella hid her confusion as she looked at the strange contraption. Pocketing it, she turned and bit down on the last bit of the fruit. Swallowing it, she felt an immense pull on her soul. Goodbye, Elder Vortexian. May we meet again someday soon. Likewise, crestfallen. A blinding kaleidoscopic light engulfed her, and she felt her stomach lurch as she was dragged through dimensions. Eventually, she arrived back on Red Vine Peak before the celestial fog of the mystic realm. She swayed on her feet and nursed her head as the mystic energies of the fruit washed out of her system. Oh, why are you back already? It's only been a few minutes. Ash asked in her mind with concern. Stella gestured for Ash to give her a second as she bent over with her hands on her knees and breathed deeply. Her heart was pounding in her chest. A full minute passed before she managed to get her breathing under control. Is this because of the mystic realmorph fruit? It shouldn't have such side effects. No, Stella straightened up and let out a satisfied sigh. I just had an intense meeting with Elder Vortexian. I was moments away from being unable to contain my excitement anymore. Elder Vortexian. Ash trailed off, seeming lost in thought. Wait, Elder Vortexian. That monarch realm cultivator from the Azure clan. Yup. Stella nodded. Ash chuckled. What's so funny? Only you could go into the mystic realm and end up in a meeting. Stella rolled her eyes. I know, the irony isn't lost on me. But, I enjoyed this meeting. Oh, how come? Because it was short and sweet, yet he gave me many spatial rings filled with cultivation resources, promised me his soul and a monarch realm level pocket realm. Why the hell would he give you all that? Wait, was he hitting on you? Hitting on me? Stella tapped her chin in thought. No, he never hit me. Ash groaned. Not hit. Hitting on. You know what, never mind. What did you promise in exchange? To help him eradicate the Azure clan. Right. A short silence followed. Oh God. You weren't joking, were you? Stella shook her head. A long sigh reverberated through her mind like a fed-up titan. And how do you plan on doing that exactly? I don't. Really, Stella shrugged. That man has gone insane, and we aren't as powerful as he seems to have deluded himself into believing we are. It's not my fault he was so easily deceived out of cultivation resources. Oh, he did give me this. She dug out the strange artifact from her pocket. It's a dimensional geolocator or something. Do you know how this works? Ash picked it out of her hands with telekinesis, and his trunk split to reveal his eye. He inspected the artifact for a while before seemingly giving up, not a clue. He handed it back to her. Did he say anything else? Let me think. Oh, Elder Vortexian did say that the Heavenly King of Azure Clan's Dream Peak holds a divine fragment and that he knows where the man is cultivating. That is some good information for the future. Right now, even looking at such a cultivator would be hubris. Right. Stella turned on her heel and faced the mystic realm. Well, I'll be off. Every minute I spend talking here is 4 minutes I could spend cultivating. What should I do with this? She was still holding that darn artifact. Glancing around, she laid eyes on a Mudcloak walking toward the citadel. Hey you. The Mudcloak looked over at her and pointed a finger at itself. Yes, you. No, don't look over your shoulder. I want you. Now come here. The Mudcloak dashed over as fast as a being with such short legs could. It looked up at her with giant glowing blue eyes with the rest of its features hidden in the darkness of its hood. Take this, she handed it the dimensional geolocator. A cultivator hellbent on destruction gave this to me. I have no idea how to use it, so you can take it. The Mudcloak let out a gleeful squeal as it took the artifact. Does the princess desire realm domination? It asked while inspecting the artifact as if it were a heavenly treasure. Sure. Who doesn't? The Mudcloak did a 90-degree bow. It shall be done in your name. Then, to Stella's surprise, it sank into the floor like the earth below its feet was nothing but water and vanished. I guess it liked it. Stella mused before returning her focus to the mystic realm. What the Mudcloaks did with that artifact was of no concern to her. All she cared about was power leveling to the next realm of power. Little did she know as she strode back into the mystic realm, the threads of fate had just been forever changed. C-419. Investigating the Mudcloaks. Ashlock had long suspected something was up with the Mudcloaks. When he had rescued them alongside Douglas from the Dragonite mines, a mere Soulfire realm pocket dimension, he had thought of them as cute little monsters reminiscent of dumb dwarfs. They could hardly speak coherently and had almost been wiped out by a race of primitive monsters. All he saw was potential in using them as a labor force, but nothing more than that. But the warning signs had been there from the start. Ashlock mused. Even in the pocket realm we rescued them from, they had created cannons capable of killing those giant turtles. At the time, I thought they were ancient weapons from a forgotten era or perhaps built by someone else. There was no doubting it anymore. The Mudcloaks had been the ones to build those cannons as they had repeated such feats with increasing scale. Whether it be turning Jeb into a walking fortress equipped with a cannon able to damage a nascent soul realm cultivator or manufacturing suits of armor and weapons that let them wipe out the mortals under Vincent's control. The Mudcloaks were far more knowledgeable and powerful than they were letting on. Until now, he'd mainly left their management to their king, Douglas. Ashlock had doubts regarding how the Mudcloaks viewed Douglas and even the Ashfallen sect. But they were diligent workers and had so far done nothing but help the Ashfallen sect develop and grow. So scrutinizing them had never really been a priority for Ashlock, and he preferred to let them do their thing. But I need to be involved if the dimensional geolocator can lead them to the upper layer and Elder Vortexian. This has gone beyond some cute monsters with questionable abilities. If they can access the layer of creation above me, they could get up to a lot without my knowledge. Since he had some free time, Ashlock decided to sat his curiosity by following the Mudcloak that had taken the artifact through the mountain. He was going to thoroughly investigate them. System, what do we know about the Mudcloaks? Ashlock asked in his mind while tracking the Mudcloak that was moving faster through the mountain than he expected. The little guy was practically in free fall. The Mudcloaks are a monster race originating from the Dragonite Mines pocket realm. They stand 3 feet tall, but little is known about their actual bodies as they are obscured by tattered black cloaks made from their own skin. Their notable large glowing blue eyes are suspected to be because of their glowing moss diet. They are considered to be harmless monsters with childlike intellects. Ashlock raised a metaphorical eyebrow at the end of the summary of the system. I don't know about you, system, but I witnessed a Mudcloak swallow a human whole, so calling them harmless doesn't seem right. And childlike intellect. Cultivators would be a space-faring civilization if children were as smart as these Mudcloaks. That is the description pulled from my memory. Do you wish to update it? No. Hold on. Who updates your memory? I can't disclose that. As expected, Ashlock changed his angle. Where do the Mudcloaks originate from? The Dragonite Mines pocket realm. Ashlock didn't believe that for 1 second. Pocket realms are created by monarch realm and above cultivators. Are they also able to create new lifeforms? Some can, but it's extremely rare. Usually, outside monsters are brought in and left to breed inside a pocket realm to populate it. Right, so the Mudcloaks and those kobold-like monsters that hunted them were brought in from outside. That is likely correct. Ashlock hummed in thought. What about those kobolds? Where did they come from? The kobolds you refer to are known as lesser drakethars, a common type of monster found on higher layers of creation. They are classified as typically Earth affinity monsters with a focus on body cultivation, giving them robust bodies and relentless stamina that cannot be matched by other monsters until the Star Core realm. Hold on, why the Star Core realm? Monsters that focus on body cultivation typically outperform monsters that concentrate more on chi techniques, as before reaching the Star Core realm, monsters have no way to regenerate chi quickly besides devouring each other. You could think of it as comparing a warrior class and a mage class. Ashlock recalled the situation back in the Dragonite mines. The Mudcloaks had weak bodies and had to use their brains to outsmart and build runic weapons to have a chance of fighting back against the relentless lesser drakethars. If the Mudcloaks are mages in that situation, it's no wonder they were struggling since the pocket realm was limited to the Soulfire realm. Hold on, who named the Mudcloaks? Douglas Terraforge, Grand Elder of the Ashfallen sect. As the crowned king of the Mudcloaks, he named them, and this name was registered in my memory. Ah, I see the confusion now. When I asked for information about the Mudcloaks, you only told me what we know about them since Douglas became their king. What were they called before he named them the Mudcloaks? Unknown. What do you mean unknown? There are no records of such a race existing outside of that pocket realm. So they must have been created. But that wouldn't make any sense. The Dragonite mines were a chi-deprived wasteland. I can't see a way the Mudcloaks could have gained access to so much knowledge while trapped in such a place. Ashlock paused as a realization hit him. It's almost as if they were imprisoned there, the giant turtles dominated the surface, forcing them to hide away underground. But that's where the vastly superior lesser Drakethars lurked, constantly raiding their cities and hunting them. This makes far more sense. If I suppose they were brought in from somewhere else and imprisoned there, that explains how they have such advanced technology and could develop rapidly when freed and given access to a place with a higher quality of chi. However, there was still one issue. If the Mudcloaks came from elsewhere, why was there no record of them existing outside that pocket realm? Ashlock queried his system again. Is there really no records of any similar monster existing? Not even one they could have evolved from. Let me see. Ashlock felt the divine tree in his inner world flash with power, sending a pulse down into the mountain's depths. Unable to verify. The cloaks of skin they wear shield their bodies from outside interference. I've never seen anything quite like it. If you brought one before your evil eye, I might be able to glean more information. And if that doesn't work, we would have to dissect one. Ashlock really hoped it wouldn't come down to that. His focus returned to the Mudcloak, who had reached deep into the mountain. The little guy had gone straight to the giant hangar where a tiny team of Mudcloaks was working on upgrading his bastion alongside their own airship-style thing that looked suspiciously more like a starship every time he saw it. The expansive space felt quite empty with so few Mudcloaks around and all the production lines deserted. Stolen story. Please report. They are all off working with Douglas on fulfilling my orders. Ashlock felt oddly bad about it, but it had to be done. Completing that city would give them access to immense wealth through the Eternal Pursuit Pavilion and a brand new pool of mortals from which they could harvest divine energy by converting them into devoted followers. The new mortals would also serve as potential customers to sell pills to, so it was overall a project that took priority only secondary to surviving the beast tide. The Mudcloak met up with a group of Mudcloaks that looked much the same as any other Mudcloak, but Ashlock could tell their cultivations were all in the Starcore realm. Are those its leaders? Ashlock wondered as he watched on. The Mudcloak showed the group the artifact, and they all crowded around it like curious children. No words were exchanged, but many excited hand gestures were going on. They are communicating telepathically. As I thought, Ashlock grumbled. He knew that Douglas's crown allowed him to speak telepathically to all Mudcloaks, no matter the distance. Their hold over the common language was also too basic to facilitate the advanced things they got up to. So they have been communicating telepathically this whole time. Can I intercept it? It seems to be part of their genetic makeup rather than a technique fueled by their earth affinity. So even my desolation chi can't block it. Interesting. I wonder if that only works locally. Ashlock had many questions. Almost everything about the Mudcloaks was one big mystery, and with every layer he unraveled, he was faced with a new layer and many more questions. How did they reproduce? What was their structure of leadership? Did they really only eat moss? Why are there no records of their existence? What were they doing in the Dragonite mines? Why the hell were they building a spaceship? Ashlock wasn't learning anything new from watching on, so he decided to take action. Instead of flooding their minds with his abyssal whispers, as he wasn't sure how well they could handle it, he decided on a different approach. One more befitting of a king. After the battle at Nitro City and learning that he could use his nascent soul realm ents as mouthpieces, the Shadow Lich Anubis seemed like a suitable ent to use as a representative. While the Lich's home had been set as Stella's shadow, Ashlock could always call on him by activating a soul anchor to recall the ent to Red Vine Peak. Sending out the order to return through their link, he only had to wait a moment. Rising from the shadows cast by his canopy, the white bamboo lich seemingly stepped out of the darkness and stood before him. You called, Creator. It was at this moment that Ashlock realized he had never spoken to one of his ents before. Creator. That's a new title. I was birthed from your immense dominion over the end of all things, the ent said cryptically. Therefore, you are my creator, and my sole purpose is to serve. The black flames that served as his eyes flared with passion as the lich bowed slightly. Do you remember anything about the shadow sovereign you were guarding? I do not, Creator. The lich straightened up. That part of me was destroyed during my creation. What of your past remains? That which was deemed relevant by the Creator. Anything else was stripped away and used as fuel during my creation process. Ashlock hadn't been the one to deem anything relevant or not, meaning that had been the work of his system. If that was the case, was Anubis loyal to Ashlock or the one who had actually created him, which was the system? Either way, that didn't matter. Anubis deemed him as his creator, and seemed fiercely loyal. The system had made sure of that by stripping everything else away. Anubis, I have a task for you. How can I serve the Creator? Ashlock faltered. He was going to have to get used to that title. Head down to the Mudcloak's hangar and serve as my mouthpiece. I need to speak with them. As you command, Anubis bowed. Shadows swirled around his feet, and he sunk into the darkness. While a portal would be quicker, Ashlock wanted the Lich to make an imposing entrance. He wanted the Mudcloaks to remember who ruled this place and that he was always watching from the shadows. Switching his focus back to the Mudcloaks below the mountain, they had placed the dimensional geolocator on a table and were effortlessly assembling a contraption around it as if they were one mind working many hands. It was so seamless how they worked with one another that Ashlock couldn't help but marvel at it. However, the Mudcloaks paused their workflow when they noticed something was off. The shadows in the room snaked their way toward the doorway as if attracted by a force and began to condense into a gateway, a swirling abyss of shadow from which a being slowly emerged. As spindly fingers of white bamboo reached out, Anubis's nascent soul realm pressure flooded the room. His head and upper torso were next, and he loomed over the Mudcloaks, who were 3 times smaller than him. He even had to hunch his back to fit in the barely human-sized room. Greetings, Mudcloaks, Anubis said in a voice that was ever so slightly inhuman to the ear. It had a certain mythical touch as if it were created by magic or an illusion of the mind rather than actual sound waves. The Mudcloaks exchanged a glance and likely a few telepathic words before one stepped forward. Friend. Anubis chuckled. I'm neither a friend nor a foe. I merely do what my creator orders of me. By this point, Anubis had fully stepped into the room, though his long cape of shadows remained partially behind in the gateway. Who is your creator? The leading Mudcloak asked. I'll leave that to him, Anubis said, and Ashlock took that as his signal to step in. Flooding Anubis with his power, an aura of desolation manifested around the Lich, and his flickering black flame eyes blazed with a golden radiance. He hadn't overtaken Anubis. He was simply using the Ent as a focal point for his all-encompassing power that was all around them. Ashlock hadn't even said anything, yet all of the Mudcloaks in the room grew excited. The Great Devourer. They cheered. Another new title, Ashlock said, and Anubis effortlessly relayed his words but added an echo to clearly differentiate between the two. This way, he spoke without using abyssal whispers. But it did lack some of the grandeur that came from using the skill to talk. Tell me, Mudcloaks, why do you call me this? He had Anubis raise a finger and point at the leading one. You tell me. The Mudcloak pointed at itself. Yes, you. The little guy jumped up and down as if he had just won the lottery. Ashlock let out a long sigh. Stop that. He had Anubis place his hand on the Mudcloak's head. The little guy stopped jumping and simply stared up at him with big blue eyes. Why do you call me the Great Devourer? Because you're the Great Devourer. The Mudcloak raised its short arms like a happy penguin, and the other Mudcloaks in the room burst into cheer. Ashlock was starting to remember why he had never bothered to converse with these monsters. Perhaps the system's judgment of their childlike intellects was confined to their capabilities of holding a conversation. I have many questions for you. Questions. The Mudcloak eagerly nodded. Questions must be dominated by answers. What? Never mind. Tell me, what were you doing in the Dragonite mines? Eating. Eating what? Moss. Let me be more specific. Ashlock felt a headache coming. If this was some high-level technique to avoid answering questions, it was working. Who put you in the Dragonite mine's pocket realm? The Mudcloak seemed confused as its eyes narrowed, and it ever so slowly raised its hand only to point at itself. Me. You put yourself there. The Mudcloak nodded proudly. I was born there. So you're a young Mudcloak. The Mudcloak pointed at itself again. Yes, you. Oh. The Mudcloak seemed confused. Young. We are all the same age. Ashlock glanced between the Mudcloaks in the room and, sure enough, couldn't tell the difference between them. It was as if they were clones of one another. So there's no older Mudcloak I could ask about your history. The Mudcloak shook its head under Anubis's hand. Ashlock was stumped. Were they really all from the same generation? It was hard to believe, but had they just come into being all simultaneously in that pocket realm? Come to think of it, I've never seen a Mudcloak child. Tell me, Mudcloak, how does your race reproduce? Whenever the cause requires more Mudcloaks. Ashlock was this close to ordering Anubis to boot the Mudcloak like a bowling pin. Luckily, he had the patience of a tree. It was a bit of an outlandish demand, but it had to be done. Show me how another Mudcloak is made. Okay. The Mudcloak tried to walk off, and Anubis let it go. The little guy wandered over to another Mudcloak and reached into its hood. The darkness around the second Mudcloak's giant eyes seemingly devoured the leader Mudcloak's hands. What the hell is it doing? Is this how they mate? Oh my god. Ashlock couldn't help but shout in his mind as a fully grown Mudcloak was pulled out of the other Mudcloak's hood and set down in between them. See, the leader Mudcloak gestured to the one it had just pulled from the abyss of another's hood. New Mudcloak. Right, that's it. You're coming with me. Ashlock ordered Anubis to grab the brand new Mudcloak and bring it up to Red Vine Peak for inspection under his evil eye. The Mudcloak gave an excited cheer at being kidnapped, and the other Mudcloaks seemed jealous as they deflated like balloons. Ashlock swore he would never understand these strange monsters. C-420. Silver Expanse. The chilling aura of metal chi gripped Sebastian's soul as he materialized in a pocket realm. His eyes narrowed as he tried to survey the blinding landscape. A seemingly endless silver expanse stretched before him until it met a jagged mountain range of steel-topped bronze that welded into the horizon. A golden hue from the sun that seemed to have been forged from molten gold dyed the sky and danced across the silver expanse. Veins of various ores ran between the harsh slopes of silver, partially hidden by razor-sharp-looking blades of copper that served as this pocket realm grass. Sebastian took a few cautious steps forward. The ground felt like polished marble underfoot, and his shadow was a distorted reflection. In fact, this world seemingly had no shadows, as everything was far too reflective and bright. Whoa, Riker said in awe as he looked around excitedly. This is what a star core pocket realm can look like. I didn't even know there could be so many metals in one place. It really is a marvel. This world of metal is a paradise for us. Riker crouched down and fanned out his fingers. His silver hair faintly glowed as he mobilized his chi. The silver ground shimmered before turning liquid. Grinning, Riker pulled his hand upwards, drawing a stream of silver from the ground. He giggled as it orbited him. No way. I'd have to expend half the chi in my silver core to make this back home or spend time extracting it from a pile of chi-infused silver. But here, I can simply pull it from the ground. Ha ha. That's environmental advantages for you. Sebastian nodded sagely as he continued to look around. Nothing but metal as far as the eye can see. Imagine being a water or, even worse, a shadow cultivator here. In such a blinding pocket realm, I might even be able to go toe-to-toe with a nascent soul realm shadow cultivator in here. One day, I hope to reach Monarch realm and be able to summon a domain of metal like this myself. Then I would be truly unbeatable. Riker stopped dancing around with the stream of metal and looked at him. Does it really make such a massive difference? Absolutely. Sebastian gestured at the landscape, ignoring the utter lack of many other chi types. The air is dominated by the ever-present chill of metal chi. This is important. When you meditate, what do you hear? The heavens whispers. Sebastian nodded. And how would you describe the heavens whispers? Are they coherent? Is it one voice or many? Riker furrowed his brows as he pondered. When I meditate, I'm overwhelmed with many intertwined strands of chi that are all shouting out for my attention. He gestured as if reaching for something invisible, but when I focus on the metal strand, I find it the most coherent in its teachings. Very good. Now, close your eyes and meditate. Breathe in and feel the surroundings. Tell me what you hear. Riker did as instructed. He cautiously sat cross-legged on the shiny surface and closed his eyes. From here, Sebastian could feel Riker's silver core realm spiritual sense spread out and roll over the land into the distance like a wave. A sharp gasp escaped the boy's lips, and Sebastian smiled as he knew what Riker was experiencing. A dominated silence. In the absence of everything else, only the metal symphony would remain. A deep, ancient, vibrational hum that resonated deep within one's bones and carried the metallic truths of the world. Metal was almost always present but was overshadowed and drowned out by other affinities. While considered one of the more basic affinities, metal chi's whispers were surprisingly hard to pick out among the noise. Sebastian attributed it to metal's innate nature, which he understood as elegant, rare, and quiet. Metal lies low, deep in the earth, preferring not to draw attention to itself and remain untouched. This is far unlike other elemental affinities, such as fire, which is loud and bright. Living in the same building as the Redclaw family has given me a particular distaste for that affinity. Whenever I close my eyes to meditate, all I can hear, see, or smell is the blazing radiance of fire, which begs my attention like an unloved child. I far prefer metal, which is more cold and aloof. This is incredible, Riker said as his eyes slowly opened. He seemed refreshed from the experience. Do you see now, Riker? The boy nodded. Yeah. Back on Red Vine Peak, meditation is like going to war. Even with the help of all the pills and resources, I still feel the need to battle for metal chi's attention. Once I have it, I must tune out the noise of the other affinities to give it my full focus. But here, Where there is nothing else, I can finally meditate with metal chi in peace. It's much the same for the heavens, you know. When casting a technique, you call out with your chi to reshape reality to your will. Try it, use a technique here, and see how much easier it will be. Riker nodded, and Sebastian felt the boy's spirit pull on the chi around them. Metal chi surged toward the boy as if he were a magnet, and his white skin took on a metallic hue as it hardened nearly instantly. So fast, Riker's eyes widened in shock as he inspected his arms, and it felt so effortless. How much chi did it use from your silver core? Riker took a moment to check before. He looked at Sebastian with his mouth hanging open. It cost me almost nothing. It's far easier to reshape reality to your will when it's already been partially done for you. Sebastian chuckled as he playfully made the silver ground around them shift under their feet. Now, as easy as using metal techniques is here, imagine the opposite. That would be the experience of another affinity cultivator arriving here. Rather than an exciting place of opportunities, it would be more of a hellscape for them. Anytime they wished to use a technique, the chi needed to fuel it would have to be pulled solely from their reserves. Furthermore, the technique would be far more costly to use, and their control over it would be lesser due to the dense metal chi's interference. Perhaps worst of all, once the battle was said and done, that other cultivator would have almost no hope of replenishing their used chi. It's what makes the Immortal's desolation chi so terrifying. When you deconstruct reality and strip it of any chi types, fighting back becomes almost impossible. Sebastian paused his teachings and glanced at Riker, who seemed to be hanging onto his every word. Do you see now why environmental advantages are king? Yes, I understand. Riker nodded. So if I reach the monarch realm, I can create a place like this. This content has been unlawfully taken from Royal Road. Report any instances of this story if found elsewhere. Indeed, and you can even manifest a domain of metal around you anytime. Sebastian smiled and surveyed the landscape again. Now, enough teachings. The last pocket realm we entered was quite good, but the chi here is on another level. It has to be mid-stage of the star core realm, and I can feel the weight of the many Daos that lurk in this place. We should explore a little before finding a good spot to cultivate. Have the others been going to pocket realms like this? Riker asked excitedly. I do not know of the others. Sebastian shook his head. But that would explain their fast progress. We are limited on the 9th layer of creation due to the realm's sparse and overall lower level of chi. It's why star core realm cultivators are so rare and often treated as elders or even grand elders of noble families. But when we are given access to these pocket realms where the chi is focused on one affinity and is also at a higher stage than us, progress becomes a breeze. It's no wonder so many in the Ashfallen sect have stepped into the star core realm as of late, yourself included. Riker whistled in amazement. So cultivation can be quick. It sure can be with the right support. After all, cultivation is mostly about overcoming hurdles. So cultivation becomes surprisingly easy when there's a godly tree backing you that seems oddly proficient at removing obstacles between ourselves and the heavens. Sebastian knew Riker was a cultivation nut. The boy was incredibly talented and spent every waking moment meditating as if the heavens, whispers were his only friends. So he could only smile, seeing literal stars in the boy's eyes. Will it always be this easy? Sebastian stroked his chin. It should be so long as the resources the Immortal can provide outpaces our cultivation. But what if these pocket realms cannot reach the monarch realm, or Ashlock is unable to source ingredients for high enough level pills one day? That is when progress will slow down, and things will get tricky. Tricky? How could things possibly get tricking for the Ashfallen sect? Riker said dismissively. Sebastian hesitated, unsure if he should share his concerns with a child. Eventually, he decided to crouch before his young master and met the boy's confused gaze. Listen, Riker, the Ashfallen sect, they aren't the good guys. In fact, they are far worse and more tyrannical than the Blood Lotus sect ever was. Riker narrowed his eyes. No, they aren't. How could you say that about my big sisters? That's because you haven't experienced the darker side of Ashfallen, Sebastian said seriously. Ashlock and Stella treat their people exceptionally well, you and me included. I mean, look where we are. Think of all the pills and heavenly truffles we have stashed away in our spatial rings. This is all priceless stuff that the grand elders of sects would kill for, yet they give it to us for free. Riker nodded. So what's the problem? There is none. So long as you stay on their side and do everything they say and want. But it's what happens to those who mildly inconvenience them or who aren't a part of the inner circle. To Ashlock and Stella, those people are seen as nothing but resources. The Ashfallen sect has the power and resources to wipe out sects and level cities. Yet, unlike other powerhouses that prefer diplomacy to avoid war, the Ashfallen sect prefers the route of annihilation. Sebastian's voice subconsciously dropped lower as if he were afraid the all-seeing eye was gazing down his back. They are heartless tyrants to all who don't bend the knee to them. A surefire way to quickly grow a list of enemies, which is fine so long as they remain on top. Which is why I said things would get tricky should the immortal stop providing miracle resources. Riker furrowed his brows as he contemplated his words. The child was bright and knew more about the world than someone his age should do to the information gleaned from the heavens, whispers. But anything about sect politics. The kid was practically clueless. Stella was dangerous to get too involved in, and he hoped Riker would come to see that. Do you have some examples? Riker eventually asked. Many. The Lunarshade family of the Tainted Cloud sect. Ashlock wiped the entire family out in a single night because they hurt Stella. However, a more relevant example would be Grand Elder Elaine. She disliked her family, so the Immortal wiped the Voidman family out, sparing almost nobody. In fact, the floating island we are using to go home is made from the corpse of the Voidman family's Grand Elder. Look, Sebastian put a hand on Riker's shoulder. I know you don't like your siblings, and some of your relatives bully your mother, but they are still your family and blood. I used to hate my siblings, but we fought side by side in wars together later in life. There's a non-zero chance that Stella will get annoyed or Ashlock will see our family as an eyesore, and they will murder everyone. Sebastian paused to let that sink in. By next week, we and possibly your mother could be the last remaining cultivators alive bearing the name Silver Spire. All because we invited death to our front door. He took his hand away, and Riker stared at the floor, seemingly lost in thought. Sebastian withdrew his sword as he detected movement in the distance. What looked like beings of molten metal were rising from the fields of copper and heading their way, likely drawn by their silver cores or the smell of the meat on their bones. I'm not telling you to never trust or rely on them, Sebastian said, stepping forward to put himself between the approaching monsters and his young master. But when working with demons like them, you have to pick and choose your words carefully. Riker raised his head and looked a little lost. Even though I'm on their side. Especially because you're on their side. Sebastian insisted, if they treat their enemies that badly, imagine how they would treat someone who betrayed their trust. If you don't stay still, I'm going to dissect you, Ashlock said through Anubis to the Mudcloak they had kidnapped. The Shadow Lich barely managed to contain the little guy and had resorted to lifting it by the arms off the floor. The Mudcloak was wiggling around and trying to run in the air. It reminded Ashlock of a misbehaving human child, apart from the fact it had the capabilities of devouring a human whole and using weapons. One thing for certain is it's not a perfect replica, he mused while closely inspecting the still squirming Mudcloak with his evil eye. Something about his invasive gaze seemed to deeply unsettle the Mudcloak to the point where it ignored threats of dissection in favor of feeling. Its cultivation level is in the Chi realm, whereas its parent, if I can even call it that, was in the Star Core realm. So, in a weird way, this basically is a child Mudcloak. It just looks the same as the one it came from. System, have you learned anything? The eyes of the Mudcloak that gave birth to this one have dimmed, and its overall cultivation dropped a few stages. So creating a Mudcloak isn't free. No, quite the opposite. While it seems they can multiply their numbers nearly instantly, it dramatically weakens them. However, this drawback is offset by their ability to quickly progress their cultivation. Interesting. Ashlock thought back to the Dragonite mines, and the situation became even clearer. The Mudcloaks were stuck in a soul fire pocket realm, which suppressed their progress. So without the ability to out-cultivate their predators, the only option was to multiply their numbers, but the lesser Drakethars were too superior, leading to them being hunted down. The Dragonite mines had been the perfect prison for the Mudcloaks, and he had broken them free. The question was, had that been a terrible mistake? A hyper-intelligent, instantly replicating race of monsters was terrifying no matter whose side they were on. If given an inch, they can take it a mile. One moment, there's only a few of them, but if given enough time, they can multiply and all reach the Star Core realm or higher. Ashlock mused, and if a single Mudcloak remains, it will remember what was done to its race as they are all telepathically linked and can quietly prepare for revenge. Ashlock closed his eye, and the Mudcloak stopped struggling. As much as he wanted to dig deeper, he wasn't sure if he wanted to know more. There was no way the Mudcloaks didn't know who put them there. System, how loyal are they really? They seem mentally enslaved by Douglas's crown, who, in turn, has an oath of loyalty toward you. Should that crown be destroyed, however, it's uncertain what would happen. The Mudcloaks would be unleashed, Ashlock said, and instructed Anubis to let the Mudcloak go. They were far too valuable for the Ashfallen sect and to the growth of the all-seeing eyes cult to make an enemy out of. Sorry to keep you here, little guy, Ashlock said through Anubis and patted the Mudcloak on the head. Here, have a fruit. The Mudcloak gleefully took the divine enlightenment fruit and ran off. It seemed mostly unbothered about being kidnapped, which was a good sign. I'll just have to keep a closer eye on them moving forward, Ashlock sighed. Things were never easy. C421. Interlude Ravina. Diana Ravenborn had taken her time choosing her pocket realm. It was faint, but each of the shards floating in the celestial fog radiated an aura that allowed one to guess what was lurking inside. Of course, it was still a gamble at the end of the day. But Diana felt like she had won hers. Everything in here is just so delectable, she smirked, raising the savage monster she had impaled with her claws off the forest floor. The little bastard snarled viciously at her despite the life leaving its beady eyes. Reaching up with her other hand, she wrapped her fingers around its legs and pulled. There was a brief shriek of pain from the monster, followed by a sickening crack and shower of blood as Diana tore it in two. Demonic mist moved at her command to block the impending splash of putrid monster blood, a lesson she had learned after the first time. It had been a real pain to clean out the smell. Letting the two halves fall to the ground with wet thuds, she crouched down and retrieved the gray beast core nestled among some decayed leaves. Rubbing the dirt off it with her finger, she popped it in her mouth and bit down hard. Her fang pierced the core's glass-like surface, and demonic chi gushed out and down her throat. Closing her eyes, she filtered the demonic chi through her spirit roots to morph it into demonic mist chi and absorbed it into her soul. Ah, that's the good stuff. Diana spat the now dulled beast core to the ground and straightened up. Her body felt warm as the new power flowed through her. Licking her lips, she glanced around the haunted-looking forest. It was an endless wasteland of half-dead necrotic trees and swirling demonic mist. The only life she had encountered were a few monsters, all of which she had slaughtered and devoured. After all, this is how monsters grew in power, and as a half-demon with a soul attuned to a type of demonic chi, she grew in power by killing and eating others. Yet she wasn't too comfortable doing it around her friends at the Ashfallen sect. Only in here, away from judgmental gazes, did she feel truly free. The monsters are quite weak for a supposed peak star core pocket realm, Diana grumbled as she glanced around to pick a direction. I wanted to pull ahead of Stella, but I suppose treating this as an appetizer for the upcoming beast tide is good enough. Beside the roaming monsters, the air here was thick with demonic mist chi, so once she found a place to settle down and meditate, she expected to progress a few stages, possibly pulling ahead of Stella. Now that they were both at the 7th stage, Diana saw an opportunity to best her friendly rival and reach the nascent soul realm first. The jealous look on her face would be hilarious. The reason she hadn't begun cultivating yet was simply that there was something wrong about this place. She felt like she was being watched by something in the swirling shadows, and things didn't add up. These monsters, while quite ferocious, as they leapt out of the mist and tried to devour her face, were ultimately quite weak. They were only in the beginner stages of the Star Core realm at best. Yet this place's chi is at the peak of the Star Core realm. Such dense demonic chi should be the perfect breeding ground for monsters, yet there are so few, and they are weak. The decayed leaves crunched underfoot far too loudly in the eerie silence of the forest as she continued forward in a random direction. Her eyes scanned the swirling mist, and her spiritual senses were on high alert, yet to an outside observer, she appeared on a casual and careless stroll. The only explanation for these weak monsters is that a predator lurks in the mist, and it must be whatever is watching me. Should I call out to it? It's really unsettling. Diana paused in place. Her raven wings sprouted from her back on instinct, and strength from her bloodline flooded her body. Her claws extended to their zenith, and her fangs poked her bottom lip. She turned around toward the sudden oppressive spike in spiritual pressure she had felt. Sure enough, approaching through the mist was the outline of a figure cloaked in shadow. Their movements were eerily fluid as if they were one with the swirling mist. Around them, the dense fog took on a bright blue tint that rapidly spread outward like a plague. A bloodline holder, a man's voice echoed from every direction as if the encroaching mist itself were speaking. Diana had lived long enough to know that anyone interested in bloodlines was to be avoided at all costs. Who are you? Diana narrowed her eyes, trying to get a read on the incoming foe. They were strong, at least in the upper stages of the Star Core realm. Due to the mist, she couldn't get an accurate read on them, but his method of approach was all she needed to discern the situation. He's been watching me from afar for a while and chose a moment when I wasn't distracted to attack. That can only mean one thing. He believes himself far superior to me. If you've found this place, there's only one thing you could be seeking, daughter of Ravina. The question is if you deserve it. With a low chuckle, the figure raised his hands, and the vibrant blue mist around them squirmed, condensing into innumerable tendrils that exploded out toward her like a flurry of ravenous serpents. Diana darted forward, meeting the attack head-on. Nothing could be gained by standing her ground or retreating when faced with a foe attacking with intangible limbs. The only chance of victory was going for the head. The world blurred, and her focus tunneled as she skillfully darted and weaved between the tendrils. Her wings collapsed on her back and fanned out when necessary to balance herself as she kicked at the ground for more speed. Any tendril she couldn't dodge, she cleaved through with chi-wreathed claws. Rotten trees and the earth exploded all around her as the tendrils missed their mark. How can mist have such tangible strength? Diana couldn't help but wonder. Her own demonic mist was only helpful in disorientating an opponent by suppressing their spiritual senses and summoning phantoms as distractions. But this man's demonic mist seemed to have far more power and control behind it. Blood pounded in her ears, and her breath was coming out ragged as she put those thoughts in the back of her mind and continued to close the gap. Almost there. Before her, the man was motionless. His silhouette was barely visible through the swirling haze, as if mocking her advance. Royal Road is the home of this novel. Visit there to read the original and support the author. One more large tendril came at her, and she barely managed to get through it without losing too much momentum. The man was too cocky, and she planned to make use of it. Do you think you can cut through my mist? His voice thundered through the forest from all directions, and Diana's eyes widened as she quickly evaded the mist that had solidified into a wall between them. I don't need to cut through your damned mist, Diana hissed under her breath as she leapt up and kicked a nearby tree to gain more height, obliterating it in the process. Spinning in the air overhead, she summoned a dagger to her hand and eyed the silhouette. I just need to kill you. Using her rotating momentum, she hurled the dagger directly at the man's head. It pierced through the mist like an arrow, but just before it made contact with the man, he vanished, dissolving into the fog. Her dagger harmlessly struck the forest floor with a dull thud. An amused chuckle echoed behind her. Eyes can be deceiving. Diana had barely processed the voice behind her before gasping in pain as a claw raked down her back, effortlessly tearing through her defenses and ripping off one of her wings. The force of the attack sent her plummeting to the ground with a thud. Her recovery was swift, thanks to her bloodline, which gave her immense endurance. She staggered to her feet and looked up. Only the light of a crescent moon sneaking through the fog between the harrowing branches of the dead trees greeted her. Her eyes darted around, but there was no sign of the man anywhere. She hissed in pain and staggered forward. The searing wound on her back was burning with foreign demonic mist chi that was eating away at not only her flesh but also her very soul. It was necrotic and difficult to contain as it began spreading down her back and to her legs, immobilizing her. Every step was torture. Shit, Diana cursed as her spatial ring flashed with silver light. A small dark fruit appeared in her hand, and she quickly devoured it. Ashlock had explained the effects of every one of his mythical fruits, and Diana had memorized them. The corrosive aura fruit allowed a cultivator to consume other chi types to replenish their own chi reserves for a short time after eating the fruit. It tasted terrible, like rotten flesh, but she swallowed it. The effect was almost immediate. Her own chi darkened as it gained a corrosive property, allowing her to devour the foreign chi invading her body and turn it into her own. Ah! She let out a satisfied groan as the intense pain faded and she regained control of her body. She also debated bringing out the mystic realmorp fruit but refrained for now. While the situation seemed rather dire, she had too many questions for this man. How did he know the Ravina clan that was said to be extinct? Was he part of it? His affinity certainly suggested as much. That's quite interesting, the fog called out to her. Usually, my phantom claw technique is enough to kill. I knew there was something special about you. Diana wiped blood from her mouth with the back of her hand and glared into the blue fog. Why are you attacking me? Are we not cut from the same cloth? Laughter echoed through the forest as silhouettes appeared, each indistinguishable from the last. It was as if she were surrounded by a whole army, but she knew better. Now that I know your game, you can't trick me like before, Diana sneered. A few illusions aren't going to do much. Illusions. The man's tone was full of disbelief. How can you be so clueless regarding your lineage? Do you know what people call us when they hear of the Ravina clan? What? All of the silhouettes encircling her in the blue mist suddenly sprouted wings of comparable size to hers and synchronously leapt up into the air with eerie silence. They didn't flap their wings to stay airborne. Rather, they remained motionless like paintings in the mist. Only one thing moved, a single silhouette that had stayed behind on the ground. Identical to the others, it looked straight at her with a blank face. We of the Ravina clan are known as the immortal demons of the mist. The single silhouette raised their hand. You will learn this lesson with your body. First came the tendrils. Now comes the legion. Lowering their hand, one of the perfectly still silhouettes in the air barreled down toward her. Diana instinctively raised her arms in a cross to protect her head and was glad she did as an immense force slammed into her, knocking her clean off her feet. She twisted in midair to land somewhat cleanly and faced off against the foe. It was a faceless man with raven wings similar to hers made entirely out of condensed mist. Diana's eyes widened as the realization set in. Just like how the tendrils of mist had enough force to smash trees, this warrior of mist likely carried the same punch. Her eyes darted to the sky. There were hundreds of them. Maybe the others are all illusions, and only this one is real. Her eyes narrowed. She had no way of knowing. The mist warrior didn't seem keen on her finding out as it didn't give pause and surged toward her like a specter. Diana went for an overhead slash to cleave it down the middle, and she did, but her hands hit nothing. The warrior simply dissipated around her attack like a regular fog and casually reformed behind her. Diana spun on her heel to counter, but it was too late. The mist warrior had reformed in less than a second and had already returned her gesture with an overhead slash. She blocked it with her wing, but the sickening crunch of bone indicated its fate. Stripped of both wings, she was stuck on the ground, trading blows with the mist warrior. It mirrored all of her attacks, and any attack it landed on filled her body with foreign chi that ate away at her soul. If not for the corrosive aura fruit, which gave her a chance to fight back, she would have long been dead. Enough. Her star core raged as demonic mist poured out of her. If she didn't go all out, she was going to die here, so holding back to preserve her chi was a fool's errand. To her surprise, her demonic mist carried the corrosive aura from the fruit. As it washed over the mist warrior, her corrosive chi clashed with it in a cacophony of hissing and crackling. It tried to fight back, but after a few seconds of staggering backward, the mist warrior melted into the fog and never reformed. Okay, at least they can be defeated. But there's no way I can win without knowing where the cultivator's main body is. His cultivation is at a higher level than mine, so he has more control over the surrounding demonic mist. The corrosive aura fruit helps me close the gap, but this is too much. Diana decided to flee after buying a precious few seconds as her mist bellowed out and clashed with the man's chi. Bringing out the mystic realmorph fruit from her spatial ring, she was about to eat it when not one, two, or even three mist warriors barreled toward her. No, the entire legion of mist descended upon her in a flurry. There was a loud hissing as they pushed through, ultimately overwhelming her demonic mist with sheer numbers. They were all real, Diana thought in disbelief. Before she could even bite the mystic realmorph fruit, a fist of mist hit her square in the face, knocking the lights out of her. Ah! Diana gasped as her eyes snapped open and quickly sat up. She instinctively grabbed her face as the last thing she remembered before her world went dark was the pain of her nose being crushed to smithereens. It was still there, untouched. Huh. Bringing her hands down, she next noticed the cold sensation of the rock under her. Looking down confirmed her fears. She had been stripped bare of everything, including her spatial rings and the mystic realmorph fruit. Checking the rest of her body, all of the injuries she had sustained were gone, as if it had all been a dream. Even her wings were back in perfect shape. Using them to cover herself, she stood up and surveyed her surroundings. There was nothing but mist-covered black rock as far as she could see. Is this hell? Some people call it that, the mist answered. But hell is where demons are made, and someone like you belongs. The swirling mist condensed into the silhouette of a man, this one far more detailed than any before. He looked at her and smiled in a way only a demon you had sold your soul to could. Now, child of the Ravina clan, he reached out his hand. Do you wish to learn the ways of a mist demon? C-422, Volcanic Ascension. Amber Redclaw's meditation had been going smoothly. Due to cultivating above a lake of fire while perched on a sword, nothing but streams of fire chi spiraled through her consciousness, imparting upon her the knowledge of an eternal blaze and flooding her soul with chi, all of which she greedily absorbed. Cultivation had never been so easy, and it made up for the last miserable few weeks due to the beast tide's storm. She was about to pull another divine enlightenment fruit from her spatial ring to try and push up another stage when something felt off. There was a sudden shift, and the fire flooding her consciousness began to die out as if drawn away by an invisible force. What is going on? Deeply confused, she tried to fight the fleeing flames, demanding they return. But they did not listen. The fires continued to recede from her consciousness, leaving behind only fading embers where a fierce inferno once raged. No. Don't leave me. Come back. It was the first time in her life she had felt betrayed by her own affinity. Fire had been a constant warmth that was always beside her. Yet she had been left in the cold darkness, alone. Fading embers were all she managed to desperately hold on to, and it felt more like an insult. Why did the flames of the heavens abandon me? Amber wondered as she spread her spiritual sense in the direction she felt the fire heading. As her senses spread, she became more baffled. What in the 9 realms is this? It started as a gradual slope of fire as if climbing a mountain. But as it reached its zenith, all Amber saw was a star of crimson fire that seemed to illuminate the world with its wrathful blaze as it slowly split in two down the middle. The intense pressure from the star was enough to suppress her spiritual sight from getting any closer, forcing her to watch on from afar in awe. We need to leave. Now. A familiar chi-empowered voice flooded her consciousness. Amber opened her eyes and saw Elder Margaret standing gracefully on a flying sword and looking into the distance with concern. Following her gaze to the distant horizon, Amber saw the physical manifestation of what she had seen in the spiritual plane. Grand Elder Redclaw was floating above a volcano with twin spirals of lava coiling around him. The sky above the lone man was ablaze, and the volcano below was crumbling under the intense spiritual pressure he was releasing. He's ascending. Amber blinked in disbelief. The Redclaw family's Grand Elder was taking the leap to the next realm. A process that not all survive, even with all the preparations. They would fail if their soul wavered for even a moment under heaven's wrath. That he is. Elder Margaret nodded. There was a mixture of deep respect and worry in her eyes. Is he ready? Amber asked as she stood up from her cross-legged position and joined Elder Margaret in watching the raw display of chi while standing atop her floating sword. That's something only he can know, Elder Margaret said wistfully as she looked to the skies. No matter the preparations you make or how perfect your foundations are, there's little a cultivator can do when faced with the wrath of the heavens besides persevering through sheer will. The only other option is to accept death. Lightning began to crackle angrily, and a sea of golden eyes poured through a tear in reality. They glared down at the cultivator, who dared to try ascending by splitting their soul. Despite the distance, Amber felt an intense prickling sensation on her skin and instinctively floated backward. Elder Margaret mirrored her actions, and the two continued to move away while keeping their eyes glued to the distant horizon. Something is about to happen, Elder Margaret said. Amber nodded in agreement. She could also feel something big was about to occur. Deciding to be prepared, she brought out a dimensional overlap fruit and ate it. Power surged through her spirit roots, and she felt the reach of her soul expand beyond her body. Her fire chi began to leak out, forming a small domain of her own chi around herself. Elder Margaret eyed her and nodded. Good idea. Not an overreaction? Amber asked. It's my first time being out in the open and watching a nascent soul realm ascension. Definitely not an overreaction. There are legends of entire cities being wiped out in the past around a cultivator, and I doubt the Grand Elder plans to exert any effort to shield his surroundings. Elder Margaret ate a dimensional overlap of her own, and their soul overlapped, creating a safe haven of their own chi. Her eyes then narrowed. It's starting. Amber was about to reply when a wave of spiritual force like no other impacted their fire domains and caused them to falter. However, that was only the beginning. Heavens! The time for my ascension has come. Bear witness to my resolve. The Grand Elder's voice erupted across the land like a volcanic roar. Amber's eyes widened, and she surged chi toward her fire domain. But it wasn't enough. In an instant, the Grand Elder's voice wiped out the lake of fire as far as the eye could see. All that remained in this now darkened pocket realm was a crumbling volcano supporting a man daring to split his soul in two. Amber and Elder Margaret hastily reformed their dimensional overlaps as the Grand Elder's voice echoed through the pocket realm. In my many years alive, thousands have become ash under my flames. Whether they be monsters or men, they burned all the same. Sects have risen and crumbled under my blazing sword, and my name, Magnus the Inferno Sovereign, has forever been etched into history. The Grand Elder raised his sword, his eyes blazed like twin suns. Now come. Test the fire of my soul, the resolve of my spirit. Should even a flicker of doubt tarnish my will to overcome your tyranny, may my soul be cast into the infernal abyss to burn for eternity. Amber could feel the intense passion behind every word as the Grand Elder recounted the feats of his life until now in the face of possible annihilation and dared the heavens to test his soul. She could almost feel the unwavering spirit of a warlord who had seen it all. The heavens answered his challenge in full force. The fiery skies churned with power as twin dragons of flame descended upon Magnus. Their maws were wide open, housing storms of crackling divine lightning. Come, dragons of flame! Magnus roared as he answered the heavens by conjuring a vortex of crimson flame that erupted upwards. There's only one being I will kneel to, and it's certainly not you. Cataclysmic divine lightning bolts arced from the dragons' mouths as they plunged into the fire. Upon impact, a wave of spiritual pressure exploded across the sky, washing away the clouds and leaving only the heavens' eyes. The entire pocket realm seemed to tremble under the weight of the battle, and Amber had to keep mobilizing her own chi to avoid her body being obliterated by the shockwaves. You can do it, Magnus, Elder Margaret whispered under her breath. Her hands were tightly clasped before her as if she were praying. Amber also said a silent prayer for the man who was seen as the pinnacle of her family. With my rapid progress through the cultivation stages, I thought reaching the nascent soul realm would only be a matter of time. Amber shook her head at her own ignorance. She couldn't even imagine putting herself in the Grand Elder's shoes right now. Her resolve and will were far too lacking to dare defy the heavens in such a way. Her mind wandered to the two other powerhouses in the sect, Stella and Diana. They were both nearing the nascent soul realm and would likely attempt ascension soon. To her surprise, she superimposed them into the Grand Elder's position, and despite being similar ages to her, she believed they would fare even better than the Grand Elder. Stella would simply laugh at the heavens, and Diana would shrug them off or even try to devour them. Amber thought as she recalled the many times Diana had come to the White Stone Palace to feast on the heart demons of the Redclaw youth. Even Elaine or Jasmine seemed like they would fare better at defying the heavens than me. Why am I not supposed to be a prodigy? What makes them different to me? This story originates from a different website. Ensure the author gets the support they deserve by reading it there. Amber continued to float backward with Elder Margaret as she deeply contemplated this sudden realization. Instead of feeling inspired by seeing a fellow fire cultivator ascending, she felt doubt and inferiority. Had I been so blinded by the pursuit of power that I'd forgotten to forge my will? If so, how can I build up my confidence and resolve? Overcoming life and death situations or having something worth fighting for helps, right? But how am I supposed to get involved with those? Even with the beast tide incoming, life is relatively peaceful in the Ashfallen sect. Amber continued to watch the spectacle while brooding on this topic. Even if all the chi in the realm wasn't being drawn toward the Grand Elder, she would still be unable to cultivate in her current state. Her doubts were quickly forming into heart demons, and if she couldn't overcome them, she would lose her status as a prodigy and simply be remembered as a shooting star that crumbled to dust like so many cultivators before her. When Stella entered the Ether Chi pocket realm, she felt like she had entered a dream woven from starlight and silk. The air here was thick, like honey. This would be a prison for someone unable to phase through the ether. But moving around was a breeze for her and the shimmering motes of lost reality that drifted lazily by like fireflies. As she sat there cultivating, she was surrounded by an endless stretch of crystalline terrain dominated by towering structures of crystals jutted upward like the teeth of an ancient beast. Every surface was polished to a mirror-like sheen that reflected the skies above, a boundless expanse of swirling nebulae and cascading auroras. Stella had discovered that these towers were part of monolithic formations responsible for keeping this small piece of paradise in the ether together. The formations pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, as if alive. It was frankly unsettling, and the feeling of wrongness grew the longer she stayed in one place. Stella's eyes snapped open as the chi around her crackled and bent to her will. Her hair and earrings were floating as if weightless, and rocks with a dull white sheen orbited her. She recalled her soul pressure to stabilize her new stage, and they all fell to the ground with the sound of clinking glasses as they skidded across the crystalline floor. Her hair and earrings also flopped back down, returning to their original state. Phew, finally, the 8th stage of the Star Core realm. However, rather than celebrating her advancement, she felt frustrated. It's taken me 2 whole weeks to advance a single stage. There's simply no way I can reach the nascent soul realm at this rate before the pocket realm ends. Why? This place is full of chi, and I was given many resources. I thought my soul would keep greedily absorbing and expanding, but as I get closer to the nascent soul realm, I feel something is holding me back. Grumbling to herself, she picked up one of the rocks that had been orbiting her and inspected it. Dull already. I wonder if the upper layers of creation have purer affinity stones. Unlike the spirit stones found everywhere on the ninth layer of creation, it would seem the upper layers had dense enough chi in the atmosphere for rocks of specific affinities to appear. The ring Elder Vortexian had provided her was full of them. The only issue was that they were spatial affinity stones. While not totally useless, as her soul could process spatial chi, she would have preferred ether chi ones. Feeling an approaching presence, Stella stopped inspecting the rock and looked over her shoulder. The nightmarish amalgamation of serpent and insect stopped at a respectful distance. Sup, Guppy. Stella got to her feet and patted the monster on the head. Did you find a good cultivation spot for me? Her pet let out an affirming cry. Good boy, have a treat. Her spatial ring flashed, and a water affinity stone appeared in her hand. While regular spirit stones were equally useful for all cultivators, that was not the case with these specialized affinity stones. It took her far more effort to convert water chi into raw untamed chi and then into ether chi. Therefore, a water affinity stone like this one was useless to her. Guppy happily devoured the spirit stone as he would eat anything. He took a moment to absorb the stone, and his entire body grew ever so slightly in size. Now lead the way, Stella gestured, and her obedient pet slithered back in the direction he had come. He was slower than usual and wouldn't be able to move at all if not for Stella wrapping him in ether chi. Stella didn't mind the speed as she casually followed behind her pet while resonating with the ebb and flow of the realm's chi. A place that exists in the in-between sure is strange. Who can even build such a place? The ground beneath her feet, which looked like solid crystal, was actually a strange blend of solidity and immaterial, each step releasing a soft ripple of luminous energy across the surface. Gravity itself felt whimsical here, and Stella found that her movements left faint afterimages, as though the pocket realm couldn't decide if she was truly here or not. In the distance, rivers of liquid ether carved their way through the pocket realm, their waters flowing both upward and downward, further defying the laws of gravity. These streams converged into floating lakes suspended in the air, their surfaces rippling with glowing waves that seemed to hum with incomprehensible whispers even to her. Her eyes were set on the horizon, barely visible between the crystalline towers. It was the one aspect of this place she couldn't reach with her spiritual sense, as apparently it didn't exist. Gazing upon the horizon with her eyes was no better. It was a brain-bending enigma, constantly shifting. Sometimes, it appeared endless, stretching into a cascade of stars, while at other moments, it curved inward as if the entire realm were encased in a luminous sphere. However, what really interested her the most besides the abundant chi was the strange flora that flourished here. Trees with translucent trunks and leaves made of condensed starlight, their branches swaying as if moved by an invisible wind. Delicate flowers made from the in-between bloomed in abundance, their petals releasing wisps of ether chi into the air like a soft mist. Stella hadn't paid the trees much attention as she had been more focused on progressing her cultivation with the pocket realm's abundant chi, and the area near the flora was where the chi was the weakest. Hold on, Guppy, Stella called out to her pet as she detoured off the crystalline path. The dark-tide devourer looked at her with confusion as she wandered over to one of the many trees. On the way, she plucked one of the flowers. I should harvest some of these for Ash so he can grow them for me back on Red Vine Peak. Stella mused as she twirled it between her fingers. Though I doubt any grove he can cultivate for me will compare to this pocket realm. Her ether chi spread out, and she plucked a dozen flowers. She didn't pay much attention to the process of them floating up and entering her spatial ring. Instead, she was more curious about the ether chi tree before her. Its translucent trunk made it nearly impossible to see, especially up close. Stella carefully ran her fingers down its trunk, and soft light pulses rippled across its surface. It has a similar texture to the floor. Spongy, yet when I push too hard, it turns solid. Stella's fingers paused as she thought of something. Guppy, come here. The dark-tide devourer slithered over and awaited further instruction. Try to bite this tree. Stella gestured to the trunk before her, which looked like it was fading in and out of reality. Guppy approached the translucent trunk with a mixture of confusion and caution. A viscous substance dripped from his row of jagged teeth onto the crystalline ground below. He gave the tree one last cautious sniff before opening. His maw wide and going for a chomp. He lurched forward, and his teeth clamped shut with a resounding snap, biting only the air. A breeze went by, rustling the unfazed tree's starlight leaves. Guppy pulled away with a soft cry and looked at Stella for forgiveness. Stella, on the other hand, was grinning ear to ear. As expected, there's still so much I don't know about the potential of ether chi. To think a tree is capable of such a feat. Imagine if I could replicate that ability to fade in and out of reality. I've been too closed-minded. Just simply expanding my chi reserves can only take me so far. To reach the pinnacle, what I need is a deeper understanding. It felt weird. Progress had slowed down, and the path forward was no longer straightforward. Yet, Stella was getting excited. Cultivation finally had more to it than patiently sitting there, absorbing chi, and listening to heaven's nonsense. It had become challenging again. Reaching into her shadow, she called upon Anubis but didn't feel his presence. That's strange. Did he leave to go somewhere? Hey, Anubis, where did you go? Stella shouted into the abyss while empowering her voice with chi. If the ether is the in-between, surely her voice could reach across reality. Guess not. Huh. Just as she was about to give up, the shadow lich slowly emerged from her shadow behind her. Mistress, Nox informed me that you called. Nox did, Stella said with surprise while looking over her shoulder. Anubis nodded, his black flame eyes flickering with interest. Indeed. The Creator's roots spread far and wide, linking many worlds. Tartarus serves as an outpost in the Pocket Realms, and Nox is its overseer. Anubis leaned in closer. You should be careful of shouting into the darkness like that, mistress, lest it answers your call. I understand your concerns. Stella nodded as she patted the Worldwalker asleep atop her head, but now that you're here, I need you to get ash for me. May I inquire what for? The lich asked as he backed away from her ear. Stella patted the tree before her. I need his help to kidnap this tree. Tell him it's for a bastion. Understood. Will that be all, mistress? Anubis asked. Stella simply nodded, and the lich wordlessly sunk into the abyss of her shadow. Stella sat down and began cultivating while awaiting her father's arrival, as she didn't have time to waste. She had a lot to contemplate and little time left to do so. The mystic realm was ending soon, and it would be time to face the Silver Spires. C-423. Interlude, Silver Spire Peak. Vespera Silver Spire, second wife of the Silver Spire Grand Elder, stood alone in a courtyard of dancing shadows. Her eyes were closed as she listened to the overhead rumbling of the heavens. It had been days since the divine lightning began enacting its wrath upon the peak, meaning her husband had commenced the final step of ascension. She had no doubts he would succeed. Selene Silverspire, his third wife, was the matriarch of the astral branch of the family. She had a high comprehension of the celestial Tao due to her blood relations with the Starweaver family, which gave her insights into the threads of fate. Due to Metal Chi's unique cultivation method of forming metal cores, there was far less friction in learning other Taos. Selene had deep insight into cosmic Tao, which gave her access to star metal techniques, while Vespera's branch of the family, the Silver Knight, specialized in Shadow Tao, making them adept assassins and wielders of shadow metal. Selene Silverspire had accurately predicted many things in the past, giving Vespera reason to trust her. In exchange for her son's life, she told me 3 truths spoken of in the threads of fate. A soul will be forged in gold. A foreign princess will incite a slaughter, and a prodigy within the family will make themselves known. The first refers to the Grand Elder's ascension to the Golden Core stage. But I don't know of a princess, nor who could be slaughtered. Though, the one I'm truly concerned about is this prodigy. With the inheritance for the Silver Core at stake, I can't afford for another wife's child to outshine my own. A faint presence cut Vespera's musings short. Speak. A man clad in black emerged from the dancing shadows like a mirage. Matriarch of Silver Knight, I come bearing news. Your son has returned. Where is he now? Vespera replied without bothering to look at the man. He was part of the Ghost Edge, an elite group of assassins under her. His ship has docked in Argentum. Vespera opened her eyes and squinted at the man. Why did he land in the capital? Argentum was a giant city surrounding Silverspire Peak. Due to how deeply the mountain range they were upon had been mined, it was a multi-layered city going deep into the earth. While Argentum supported many places to dock an airship as the mining industry had to be conducted in faraway lands, they had their own personal dock. Trackers, the man gruffly replied. Vespera's shadow stirred, and 2 eyes looked at the man. Have the Ghost Edge escort him here. If anything happens to him, you know the consequences. As you command, the man shifted back into the shadows. Trackers. I thought this might happen. Vespera clicked her tongue. This place was secret to all except the Silverspire Grand Elder himself. Due to the nature of the inheritance challenge for the Silver Core, her son had to step out of the shadows and into the open to conduct business, making him a target. Shards of black metal rose from her shadow and floated behind her like a cape of shrapnel as she walked through the courtyard toward a meeting room. It only took a few hours before Vespera felt a familiar presence. Deidre, she said as a tall young man with jet black hair streaked with silver stepped out of the darkness. Mother, he whispered in return. As a byproduct of his intensive training during youth, he could never bring his voice above a whisper or look his mother in the eyes. I have returned. And the trackers. Vespera stood from her chair and walked over to her boy. She ran a finger down Deidre's cheek, and he shuddered. Killed without a trace. He meekly replied. Good boy. Do you know who they were from? They were from Zenovia's branch. Vespera's finger paused against his cheek, and her face twisted into a vile expression. Of course, only that bitch would be so brazen to try and harm my boy. Just because she's the first wife. Heavens, I can't wait to skin her alive someday. Say, Deidre, where is your sister? Deidre opened his mouth to speak but couldn't find the words. He looked at the floor as if seeking comfort in the shadows. Deidre dear, Vespera leaned in and felt his pounding heartbeat against her chest. You wouldn't hide anything from your mother now, would you? Where is your sister? He gulped. Saphira is dead. Vespera felt the world freeze at that moment. 100 thoughts flashed through her mind, and uncontrollable emotions erupted. The metal shards in her shadow cried out. Disbelief, denial, anger, rage, and hatred overlapped like a raging storm. She opened her mouth, and a single word escaped her lips. Who? I don't. Who was it? Deidre, Vespera said, her chi-infused voice cutting the air like knives. Who was it? Who killed your sister? My daughter. A proud member of the Silver Knight branch. I need a name, a face, a description. Now. A monster. Mother. A terrifying creature from the beyond. I swear. Words cascaded out of Deidre's mouth as if he was scared to pause and breathe. I picked Saphira up from a city near Terraforge Peak. We were traversing the western wilderness when her ship's defensive formations suddenly powered up to full. We didn't know what was happening, and it was already too late by the time we went to investigate. Deidre, a man trained to kill since birth, shook like a leaf as he recalled the event. I tried to save her mother. We all did. But it was hopeless. That thing cannot be beaten. This story originates from Royal Road. Ensure the author gets the support they deserve by reading it there. Vespera clamped her fingers around Deidre's throat. Details, Deidre. What did this monster look like? How did it kill Saphira? Deidre choked as he replied. The monster's top half was a mixture of a ghostly woman with translucent eyes and deer antlers. But her legs were a squirming mass of shadow tendrils. It was these she used to attack. They phased right through Saphira's defenses and ripped out her soul. To Vespera's surprise, Deidre actually raised his voice higher than a whisper. Mother, I saw it all. Everyone was dead, only she was still alive when we boarded the ship. The monster had saved her for last as if she were a dessert. She looked at me, hoping I could save her. I tried, but I was too late. I watched as my sister's soul was devoured. Even if you send me to the gates of hell, I will not find her. Only in the stomach of that monster does she exist now. Vespera released her grip on her son, and he coughed as he stumbled backward. Didn't I inform you to take the long way around the western wilderness? We already knew something was lurking there. The ghost edge had cleared the path beforehand, and we were taking a less direct route toward the east. Deidre's voice dropped to a whisper. What we didn't expect was this monster could phase through reality and ignore our defenses. The monster was not something we could fight. It was the spirit of death. Could this be the slaughter princess the prophecy spoke of? Vespera cursed as she turned away from her son and began pacing the courtyard. The loss of her daughter would significantly harm her political power within the family. I now have as many children as Liriana. My only advantage is that Deidre is older and has reached the Silver Core realm, unlike Riker, who is only 5 and likely still in the Iron Core realm at best. She turned on her heel and stared at her only remaining child. Deidre, how did your business venture go? Quite well, he replied in his usual hushed tone. I set up an underground bounty hunting company and secured a few high-end deals before hastily returning here. I highly doubt my other siblings could have set up anything as profitable so quickly. For your sake, I hope your words are true, Vespera said with a serious tone, because with your dear sister dead, you're the only pawn I have to play. Whoever inherits the Silver Core is guaranteed an effortless path to the Golden Core realm. Whichever branch of the family inherits the Silver Core will be considered the main branch and assume control over the metal supply. Do you understand? I understand, Mother, Deidre said wholeheartedly. Vespera turned to the side as a presence lurked in the shadows. Speak. It was the same man from the Ghost Edge Assassins. Matriarch, Your presence is urgently required on Silverspire Peak. Why? She snapped at the man. Can't you see I'm busy talking to my son here? What could possibly be more important than learning of my daughter's death and that the fate of the Silvernite branch hangs in the balance? Matriarch, please excuse my intrusion. But the Celestial Empire and the Starweaver family have arrived at our gates and demanded an audience. As the Grand Elder is currently in closed-door cultivation, the duty of attendance falls upon his wives. Vespera's eyes widened. The Starweavers, I could understand as we have some close ties to them, but why is the Celestial Empire here? I apologize, but I do not know. The Celestial Empire arrived so suddenly we haven't had a chance to investigate possible causes. Vespera frowned. Those bastards are far from home, so their motives can be discerned by the size of their forces. The situation is still developing, but as of now, we believe their force to be a small fleet of elite high-speed airships carrying 50 enforcers and a member of the Celestial Council. 50 enforcers. Vespera couldn't believe what she was hearing. Enforcers were usually elites in the Star Core realm. Such a number would be enough to wipe out a noble family, and with the involvement of a member of the Celestial Council who was either in the nascent Soul realm or Monarch realm, this force was powerful enough to wipe out a sect. Do you think we should flee? Deidrin asked, bringing Vespera out of her shock. No, she flatly replied. The Celestial Empire hasn't come here for a fight. How do you know, Mother? We are still alive, are we not? With a force like that, they wouldn't have bothered knocking at our door first. Either they have demands we must accept, or there's something else I've missed. She tapped her chin. 50 enforcers is one of the largest fleets I've heard of in a long time, but still within the realm of possibility. But a council member. Just what could require a council member to move? They rarely show much interest or presence out here in the wilderness. Vespera turned to her son. I have a job for you. Am I not coming with you? The boy tilted his head. She shook her head. No. This meeting doesn't matter as we ultimately have no control over their demands. However, if the Silverspire family comes out of this alive, her eyes narrowed, I want us to emerge victorious. This is a good opportunity. Kill your siblings. What? Hush. She put a finger on his lips. Don't say what. The correct question is who. Just do as Mother says. There's a monster out there that killed your sister without leaving a trace, and there's the most powerful empire knocking at our door. The other branches may panic, but we will focus on the objective. The Silver Core. Indeed, it seems you have inherited my intelligence, at least, she said, lowering her hand. Kill your elder brothers and sisters first. Target those from Zenovia's branch. Deidrin nodded. What about Riker? Riker. Vespera snorted. He's only 5 and was sent off to Darklight City. He's not worth worrying about. I'm not so sure, Mother. That kid, he always seemed a little different. Oh. Vespera searched his expression. He seemed unsettled. An assassin needs to trust their instincts, and looks can be deceiving. Fine, if you want to kill him, go for it. Vespera waved dismissively. I never liked the twerp and his mother anyways. The Grand Elder obviously has a soft spot for them, so removing Riker from the occasion will doom Liriana. After all, without a pawn in the game, she can't even play. It's as you say, Mother. Good, now go. I have a meeting to attend. Vespera felt an oppressive aura blanketing the entire peak as the black suit of armor she wore to approach stealthily fractured into many shards and retracted into her shadow. Landing in one of the many courtyards, her sword splintered, joining the suit in the shadow. Checking her robes were immaculate, she strode through a doorway and down a corridor to the main hall. On the way, she had the misfortune of running into the Grand Elder's favorite little flower. Liriana, Vespera called out. The regal woman covered from head to toe in clinking jewelry glanced at her. Vespera, for a branch family focused on stealth, you sure are noisy. Vespera almost felt a vein pop in her forehead. Somehow, this vile woman got under everyone's skin so effortlessly. However, she usually wasn't so direct. And you're just a pretty flower with no thorns, Vespera snapped back. Oh, I have thorns, the woman smiled, but I find thorns work best when kept hidden. Vespera snorted. Hidden or not, dull thorns are nothing but bumps. Let's stop beating around the bush, dear. It's so very tiresome. The bitch stared at her blankly. Do you need something from me? What could I possibly need from you? All that talking with you results in as a headache. How curious. If I recall, you were the one to call out to me. Are you perhaps a masochist who enjoys being so easily tormented like a child? Shards of black metal erupted from Vespera's shadow and paused an inch from Liriana's neck. The Grand Elder has no need for a vixen like you. Do it. Liriana stared right at her. Kill me. The shards trembled in the air, edging ever closer until they pressed against her slender neck. I know you won't. Liriana narrowed her eyes. Oh. Vespera smirked. Has Riker returned yet? No, but he will soon. I wouldn't count on it. Vespera recalled her medal and walked past Liriana. She had no desire to kill the woman, as it would be far more satisfying to watch her downfall. Whether Riker lived or not, it didn't matter. There was no chance the Silver Core would go to the seventh son. C424. Treaterview. Ashlock had kidnapped not one, not two, but 20 ether chi trees from Stella's pocket realm, and they were all gathered before him like a small, out-of-place forest. Their translucent trunks shifted in and out of reality, giving them a ghostly appearance, and their starlight leaves seemed unfazed by the violent winds. Their roots were exposed atop the stone, yet they showed no signs of needing stabilization. He stared down at them with his evil eye to confirm his hunch. They were, in fact, all-star core realm spirit trees. Since they all met the minimum qualifications, it was time to conduct a job interview. I can't believe I'm about to do this, Ashlock mused as he moved his ethereal roots to wrap around and connect with the translucent tree's roots. He made sure to be gentle. As a fellow spirit tree, he understood the struggle of being unable to run or flee a superior foe. Can you all hear me? He asked as he pushed his voice through his roots and into their souls. A flood of replies came back. They were closer to raw emotions than speech, but he could get the gist. The mental capabilities of these spirit trees were on par with Quill, the ink affinity tree that oversaw his library. Meaning they were smart enough to understand their situation. Yet they were more curious than scared. Perhaps the survival instincts of an ether spirit tree that grew up in a monstrous pocket realm were less than a demonic spirit tree like him. Okay. I suppose we can start with introductions. My name is Ashlock. He began and just took a moment to appreciate how strange this situation was. Now, yes, you have been kidnapped by me. However, it was done with good intentions. What is kidnapping? Don't worry about it. All you need to know is I have a job offer. Yes, nutrients, chi, and water will be provided. No, I'm not looking for a girlfriend at the moment, maybe in the future. Can we get back on track? They weren't even communicating with words, yet these trees were so darn talkative. They had an endless flurry of questions as if they had been condemned to silence for 1,000 years and had finally been set free. Listen, here's the deal. I'm building a floating island that will serve as my sect's flagship, and I want to incorporate ether chi into its capabilities. I need one of you to agree to be fused with a bastion core to provide the island with your chi. Of course, I will replenish any lost chi. No, I don't have a fine-looking trunk. Hey. Ashlock used an ethereal root to slap away a long wisp of ether chi coming at him from one of the trees. No touching me. Are any of you interested or not? Yes, it means you get to stay here, all of you. Seriously. You all want the job. Receiving a confirming wave of agreement, Ashlock felt conflicted. He only needed one to turn into a bastion, which he planned to merge with Erebus to make it the ultimate flagship with access to both ether and void chi. He had this image in his mind of a ghostly floating island. It would appear out of nowhere, obscured by fog, and decimate any foes before vanishing like a phantom. While he would manage the long-range teleportations of the flagship within his root network, the island needed to be able to move itself quickly during combat scenarios. As Vincent had so kindly taught Ashlock during their fight, shields couldn't block every attack thrown at it, including the Voidstorm Aegis, which he could activate if he was controlling the bastion directly. Void Chi could do a lot of that, but compared to Ether Chi, it was far too costly to use Void Chi to move such a large island around. Increasing the size of Erebus from 30 meters long to over 100 had certain drawbacks. While it did look far more imposing, the cost of moving it through the void had more than tripled. Ashlock opened his sign-in system. Idletree Daily Sign-in System. Day 3668. Daily Credit 10. Sacrifice Credit 1870. Sign in. There were still 2 days until the Mystic Realm ended. While his sect members were off having fun, he had amassed nearly 2,000 credits through passive income to his divine stock market from his worshippers and eating a few weak monsters from the beast tide. An amount that could have been game-changing a few months ago, but it felt like so few now with many things demanding its expenditure. Lifestyle inflation comes for us all, huh? Though I expect to get far more credits once the beast tide scales up to my cultivation level and the new city is built. Ashlock dismissed the system screen and switched his focus to the divine flesh tree in his inner world. Say system, would it be possible to turn one of these trees into an official bastion but link them all to one bastion core? So long as they are confined to the area designated as the bastion, it should be possible if they curl their roots around the bastion core and the leading tree is willing to share. Okay. Ashlock returned to Red Vine Peak and addressed the kidnapped ether chi trees. Listen up. I just confirmed that the floating island can accommodate all of you, but I need a leading tree that will become my offspring. Whoa, okay, fine. You can all become my offspring, but only one will have access to the bastion core. What Ashlock witnessed next was a Mexican standoff between, well, trees. Their translucent trunks faded to the point where he could only see them through his evil eye, and it was in the in-between where the fighting happened. Chi crackled violently through the ether, causing reality to tremble and warp around the small forest. Okay, stop. I'll just pick the one with the highest cultivation. Yes, it's fair. No, I don't care what that tree did centuries ago. It was the fate of all trees to compete over the same scarce resources, so the one who had managed to progress their cultivation the furthest seemed the best fit for the job. Your name is now Akasha. It represents sky or ethereal space. Divine energy arced off his trunk and struck the chosen tree. Veins of golden light flashed down the length of the tree's trunk before settling down a moment later. Anyone could tell at a glance that Akasha was special compared to the other ether trees around it. I forgot that as a god, giving out names carries a weight, but was it always that obvious? System, how much divine energy did that use? You named a being in the star core realm and older than you. They are also not a worshipper, nor one of your offspring. So, bestowing a name used a lot of divine energy. But it was siphoned from the ambient amount in your inner world that hadn't yet been used to increase your number of sacrificial credits. So the passive growth of my credits will be greatly decreased for the time being until I recoup that divine energy. That is correct. Darn it. What advantages do beings I have named have? Their names become intertwined with your fate and gain power over time. Furthermore, their cultivation potential is unlocked, and any actions they do in your name will result in divine energy. Taken from Royal Road, this narrative should be reported if found on Amazon. So they basically become my named champions. What would happen if I tried to name all of these trees? You would run out of divine energy and burn through all your sacrificial credits before reaching the fifth tree. Ashlock decided to hold off on naming the other trees, but he thought he might one day create a council of named spirit trees to help him manage his rapidly growing sect. Their roots fused, and unsurprisingly, Akasha accepted him. Now that you are my offspring, let's begin. Do you wish to turn Akasha into a bastion? Yes, but not yet. First, I need to plant all these ether trees on the bastion. Ashlock shouted into his shadow. Anubis. Creator, you called. Anubis asked as he stepped out of the shadows. Get the Mudcloaks up here, I have a job for them. It's time to make the flagship unbeatable. As you wish. Anubis left to fulfill his orders. Ashlock didn't have time to waste, so while awaiting the Mudcloaks' arrival, his vision blurred as he headed as far west as possible. Hitting the absolute edge of his roots and maximizing the distance his eye of the tree god could see, he managed to gaze upon what he believed were the outskirts of the Spire's family's lands. There were vast fields tended to by people in rags. The storm of the beast tide hadn't reached here, yet the skies were darkened, and there was the sound of rumbling thunder and enraged lightning. He had experienced heaven's wrath one too many times to not know it when he heard it. Judging by the intensity, this is definitely caused by someone ascending to the nascent soul realm. An airship drifted on through the sky, casting a looming shadow over the farmers. The difference between the poor farmers in rags toiling away at the soil below and the airship embroidered with enough metals to make it gleam like a mirror was like the gap between heaven and earth. This airship seems too fancy to be carrying miners. Ashlock peeked onto the airship deck and confirmed his suspicions. Standing at the bow of the ship, flanked by what appeared to be guards, was a man with long silver hair that seemed weightless. His gaze was locked on the horizon, his pale violet eyes shimmering like stars. He appeared on high alert as he kept tabs on his surroundings. Commander, he suddenly said, and the man beside him straightened. Yes, my lord. Power up the shields. The commander's eyes widened in panic. Is it the Soul Eater? Soul Eater. Ashlock wondered, is that what they are calling Nixalia? No, we are too far west and close to Argentum. The Soul Eater was last spotted near Terraforge Peak. His head eerily swiveled like an owl, and he looked into the sky at Ashlock. It seems we have caught the interest of something else, a being far more sinister. Oh, this guy can feel my gaze. Ashlock was surprised. One of the only people who had noticed his gaze while using his Eye of the Tree God skill had been Valandor. He could understand if they noticed him watching through spiritual sight, but his system skill. This guy is dangerous to me. If I had to guess, he must be one of Riker's half-siblings. But what is with his eyes? They seem to hold an insight that shouldn't belong to metal chi. A metallic sheen shimmered to life around the ship, and Ashlock noted it speeding up. Since this was at the very edge of his effective range, the window of opportunity for him to do something was quickly closing. Should I kill him? He is a risk, and it would eliminate one of Riker's siblings from the competition, not that he will lose. Ashlock felt hesitant. He rarely went on the offensive, especially over something like this where he wasn't directly threatened. It could have unknown repercussions. Contact Silver Spire Peak, Riker's half-sibling said to the commander. It seems we have earned the ire of that fake god that made itself known at the meeting in Nitro's city. Fake god, my lord. Yes, the all-seeing eye, the man said as he stared directly at Ashlock. The one the Starweaver family was so concerned about. Ashlock decided at that moment what stance he would take. A farmer reached up and wiped the cold sweat accumulating on his forehead. With the New Year's arrival, temperatures remained low, but he had no choice but to toil away, preparing the fields for planting. Unlike the elusive Silver Spires, who lorded over him from a mountain of sparkling wealth, he was destined to tend to the earth until he died at an age those immortal figures considered a long cultivation session. A sudden shadow loomed over him, blocking out the precious few streaks of sunlight that had been warming him through the clouds. Stretching his back and looking up at the cause, he was unsurprised to see one of the Silver Spire family's airships. In haste, he got down on one knee as it passed, as did every other farmer. It was tiresome having to show his respects when tending to a field so close to Argentum as it saw a lot of traffic, but there were stories of slaughters that he didn't wish to experience. Showers of metal would descend upon those who didn't show their respects, wiping out entire villages. After all, those immortals hardly even needed food. The freaks could sustain themselves by absorbing chi from the metals. So, disrupting the food supply was a second thought to them. Their fragile egos were far more important than if people starved. The farmer clicked his tongue. His mood was especially sour as the echoes of heaven's wrath had kept him up for days, and the clouds made working the fields miserable. All this work just so I can afford a ticket on a darn airship to live another few decades. He scrunched the soil and clenched his teeth in sleep-deprived anger. I wish those bastards would get a taste for once. They claim there are great horrors out there that they protect us from, but I don't believe that for one fucking second. A bell suddenly rang out, resonating across the land. He glanced up, and the ship overhead radiated with a silver glow. Its shields were up. Huh. His eyes darted across the fields as panic set in. Did someone not show respect? Are they going to slaughter us? Everyone else was glancing around like him with fear on their faces. He could shit-talk the cultivators in his head all he wanted, but in reality, they were practically gods to him and the other mortals. A tense moment passed, yet the ship continued sailing across the sky, showing no sign of attack. Yet the bell kept ringing out, and the shields glowed with intensity. As that bell a distress signal? The farmer slowly stood up as the airship was now in the distance. He had to use his palm to block out the sunlight to get a clear view, but nothing is attacking them. The bell's ringing was cut short by a sonic boom that sounded like two godly frying pans impacting. It popped his ears and sent him stumbling back. What the? He yelped as he kept shielding his eyes and watched the airship explode into pieces as if a giant arrow had shot right through it. As the pieces of the ship rained to the ground below, leaving a trail of crackling metal chi in its wake, the arrow in question turned out to be a giant flying sword suitable for a titan. It whistled through the air and did an arc around the falling ship as if searching for survivors. An aura of black mist tinged with silver wreathed the blade, and it seemed to have veins along its surface that pulsated as if it were alive. The farmer felt a chill run down his spine as he looked upon the living sword. It seemed to hunger for more. The farmer's mouth gaped wide open, his eyes so wide they felt like they would fall out of his face. Never in his life had he witnessed such a sight. What is that sword? He was at a loss for words. A Silver Spire airship belonging to the immortals of this land had been obliterated in a second by a floating demon sword. However, it was not alone. A few cultivators stood on floating swords before the demon sword. Their pristine white robes embroidered with silver and purple stars bellowed in the wind. Streams of silver orbited them, and a few had even drawn swords. Purple stars on their backs. They must be from the astral branch, one of the four great branches of the Silver Spire family. A devilishly handsome man in the middle of the group raised his sword and pointed it at the demon's sword, demonic blade in service of the all-seeing eye. For what reason do you attack an envoy of the Silver Spire family? The all-seeing eye. Who is that? The farmer wondered as he slowly backed away. He knew what happened to mortals who dared to stay too close to a fight between cultivators. The mere sound waves caused by the clashing of their blades could rearrange his organs. Is this how you treat a potential ally? The Silver Spire cultivator looked at something in the sky and said, "We are happy to go along with your little game if it were to also benefit us." The farmer felt the breath taken from him in shock as he watched the demon's sword seemingly teleport and pierce the Silver Spire young master through the chest. The cultivator seemed just as bewildered as he looked down at the sword impaling him and coughed blood. "I'm the Silver Spire's fifth son. How could you? You overestimate your worth." A voice that sounded like a tortured soul came from the sword as it twisted and tore the cultivator to pieces. The farmer felt his stomach lurch from the sight, and he became even more disorientated as the bloody pieces didn't fall to the ground like he and the other cultivators likely expected. No, the demon's sword absorbed the Silver Spire cultivator's torn-up body, and his blood-stained robes were reduced to dust that flew away in the breeze. C-425. Soul Weapon. Ashlock was somewhat taken aback as his sword that harbored Vincent's vengeful soul devoured the Silver Spire cultivator's body. He hadn't known it could even do that, especially on its own. "Stella gave me this Blooderon sword as a birthday gift. I know it can grow in strength if fed life force, but since when could it eat people? System, is this a new feature?" Golden words flashed in his mind, silencing his questions. "The Sword of New Beginnings has devoured its first soul. 120 credits have been split between you. Plus 60 SC. Wait, this soul weapon can farm credits for me." Ignoring his question, another notification appeared. "The ego of your soul weapon, the Sword of New Beginnings, has begun to awaken. Continue to feed it to awaken it fully. It really is a demon sword." The Silver Spire commander shouted at the top of his lungs, his face twisted in utter terror. Ashlock was unsure if this man's fear was due to the floating sword before him or the fact that the young master he was supposed to be escorting had perished in such a gruesome way. Whichever it was, the outcome for this commander was likely the same. Ashlock used telekinesis to slowly tilt his soul weapon and pointed its tip at the commander as a bloody mist hung to the sword. Like an executioner, the sword radiated a subtle bloodlust. Your death was sealed the moment you deemed the all-seeing eye a fake god. Like Anubis, Ashlock used the sword as a proxy to speak through so he could talk without having to use his abyssal whispers skill. The voice from the sword sounded quite similar to Vincent's final moments of anguish before death but was distorted as if he was shouting from within a metal helmet. "This is Argentum. There's no place for a self-proclaimed evil god here." Spittle flew from the man's mouth as he barked and pointed his sword at the demon's sword. "Especially after killing the young master, the Silver Spire family will not rest until your fake religion is decimated." Ashlock wanted to tell this man how badly he was wrong, but he didn't get the chance. The fool flew forward toward Ashlock's sword and, with a two-handed swing, struck at the demon's sword. There was a clang and shower of sparks as the two weapons collided, but neither yielded. The commander's strength was admirable, being near the peak of the Star Core realm. His metal affinity made his sword far more robust than it had any right to be, and his skin glowed with the silver sheen. However, Ashlock's soul weapon had been crafted from Blooderon, a type of metal forged under ancient battlefields by resentful souls who refused to move on. While not usually much stronger than mere iron, when fed life force, it became more robust to the point of being capable of parrying monarch realm attacks. That was normal Blooderon, though. Ashlock's weapon harbored the soul of a near-peak nascent soul realm blood, gravity, and illusion cultivator. A man who had ruled the wilderness with an iron fist and had a bloodlust so intense it was like a raging sea. There was no telling what the capabilities of this soul weapon were, hence, it had a grade on his status screen. Only once its soul fully awakened would it be given a grade. All Ashlock had to do was give it more souls to devour. Luckily, he had some silver-haired fools floating before his blade. Ashlock increased his telekinetic hold on the demon's sword as he prepared to go on the offensive. Surprisingly, the commander noticed the rising chi levels and did the smart thing. "Disperse." The commander shouted as he fell back, creating a gap between himself and Ashlock's sword. Rather than pressing on, he actually retreated. The many cultivators acknowledged the order and fanned out in random directions, leaving the commander alone. That was the right move. Ashlock was impressed. Most cultivators were egotistical fools who wanted to throw themselves at any blade like a whetstone, as they seemed to think life and death battles were the only way to grow stronger. Hold on. Why is he still here? Now, it's just you and me, the commander grinned. My sacrifice will not be in vain. Word of what happened here will reach the Silver Spires, and you will be brought to ruin. Oh, never mind. This commander is just like the rest. An utter fool. Ashlock didn't care what a weak family like the Silver Spires thought about him, but if they knew he had orchestrated this slaughter, Riker's upcoming meeting was bound to be a bloodbath. Now, he was not strictly opposed to mass murdering obstacles, but the Silver Spires were more valuable to him alive than dead. If he's so eager to make a last stand, I might as well play along and farm some divine energy in the process. Ashlock mused as he wrapped the sword with a thick layer of desolation chi infused with metal Dao. Do you think fleeing like rats will save you? Nobody can escape the all-seeing eye. Ashlock said through the sword before it shot forward like a bullet. The commander met the weapon like before in a shower of sparks and grim determination. However, after a single exchange, the commander's expression said 1,000 words as his sword, wreathed in metal chi, decayed to rust before his eyes. Impossible. Ashlock's sword reeled back and cleaved effortlessly through the commander's rusted blade, its momentum carrying it deep into the man's chest and shattering his bones. A shocked gasp escaped his lips as he hurled up blood, which the demon's sword greedily absorbed. No. He gargled as he limply put both hands on the sword's edge and desperately tried to push it away. The black mist of desolation coating the blade hissed against his hands and from within his body as the commander's metal chi defenses crumbled under the corrosive hunger of the metal-infused desolation chi. The once lustrous silver sheen that had coated the commander's skin dulled to a sickly brown before flaking away, exposing flesh that blackened and disintegrated into ash. The commander let out a final helpless cry, and he showed signs of trying to go supernova before he slumped forward, dead. He was nothing but a husk after his organs had been disintegrated. Metal chi condensed into a form similar to mercury and began to pour out of his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Not interested in seeing if his soul weapon could withstand a point-blank supernova and feeling bad for the farmers below, Ashlock needed to deal with the situation quickly. Devour him, Ashlock instructed his soul weapon. As if the sword itself was alive, leech-like tendrils of blood erupted from its surface, writhing hungrily as they latched onto the remains of the commander, draining the last pieces of his body and soul until nothing remained but dust. The Sword of New Beginnings has devoured an 8th stage Star Core Realm soul. 364 credits have been split between you. Plus 182 SC. Ain't no rest for the wicked, Ashlock hummed to himself as he spread out his spiritual senses and picked his next target. Using desolation chi, he tore a rift through reality in which his soul weapon flew through. He had turned the sword into the cultivator equivalent of a guided hypersonic missile. Unfortunately, his targets were regular humans. The cultivator he targeted managed a last-second evasive maneuver that saved them from being impaled through the back. It almost felt like precognition. Do these Silver Spire people have abilities similar to those of the Starweaver family? Whatever. He will die eventually. Ashlock used telekinesis to change the sword's direction. Since his sword was being moved without the restriction of a limb, there were no limitations on how quickly the sword trajectory could change. Got you now, Ashlock said as the cultivator had hardly recovered from his maneuver, and the sword was coming from his blind spot. Yet, to Ashlock's surprise, the cultivator managed to avoid death again by jumping off his floating sword at the last second. Definitely. Some kind of precognition, Ashlock mused as he opened a portal below the falling man, and the guy screamed as he fell through. The portal led right to the sword, which the man was promptly skewered on. He had amassed quite the velocity, so his body lurched like a rag doll as it hit the sword handle guard. He let off a short gargle before dying and being devoured by the sword. The story has been stolen. If detected on Amazon, report the violation. The Sword of New Beginnings has devoured a 4th stage Star Core Realm soul. 288 credits have been split between you. Plus 144 SC. What was left of the cultivator's robes turned to dust and flew away in the breeze. A few farmers down below had witnessed the man's death, and they stared up into the sky with a mixture of terror and awe. Those who defy the all-seeing eye will die, Ashlock said through the sword for the farmers below to overhear before he picked his next target and teleported the sword away through a rift. He wasn't worried about showing off a little because cultivators as egotistical as the Silver Spires wouldn't bother questioning random farmers anyway. Might as well use the opportunity to build up his legend. The demon's sword barreled into the next target, and the man blocked it with an artifact. Oh buddy, That defensive artifact relies on metal chi, yeah. Much to the cultivator's horror, the metallic force field around the man turned brown before disintegrating. There was a brief moment as the cultivator realized their looming death before they were promptly impaled. A scream, another dead. That's what happens when you depend far too much on artifacts. The Sword of New Beginnings has devoured a second stage Star Core Realm soul. 164 credits have been split between you. Plus A2SC. 82 credits. For how much chi and effort this is taking, it's hardly worth the few credits I'm getting due to the split. Ashlock sighed as he picked his next victim. Reapers should really get a raise. This shit is so bothersome. The world blurred as he followed his sword and arrived at the location of the next person. Hold on, is that an incoming fleet? Ashlock realized a problem. In his spiritual sight, which was limited to a range not far beyond his roots, he hadn't seen what was on the horizon. But now that he was here, he saw through Eye of the Tree God, a fleet of Silver Spire ships fast approaching from Argentum. The cultivator he had picked as prey was barreling toward these airships at max speed. Since the ships were beyond his reach, Ashlock could do nothing against them. He could only fight beyond his roots via a bastion or sending one of his summons or sect members. His only option was to silence this cultivator before he reached the ships. I really should avoid doing things at the edge of my root range, Ashlock cursed as he infused his sword with more desolation chi, this time with the Tao of metal and earth and also the weight of his inner world. He wanted to hit hard. Like a sledgehammer striking a tin can, the heavily empowered sword descended from above and smashed into the cultivator, sending the man plummeting into the ground like a meteor. The metal chi-coated man hit the ground with a satisfying thunk and carved a long trench in the field. Farmers screamed as they ran out of the way. The cultivator groaned as he tried to stand, but his body seemed far too broken after that hit. Ashlock decided to put the cultivator out of his misery. The demon sword slowly floated overhead. The cultivator barely managed to glance up in time to see the demon sword descend like a guillotine, and with a crunch, the man's head was chopped off. The decapitated cultivator's body slumped against the sword that was half submerged in the soil as if it were his grave. Tombstone. Like before, blood tendrils emerged from the sword and absorbed the body. The Sword of New Beginnings has devoured a first stage Star Core Realm soul. 176 credits have been split between you. 176. That's a little more than the last guy, but this one stage is lower. Why did I get more credits this time? Ashlock ran through some options before he noticed the body was a bit more intact than the previous ones. Ah, I see. Plus 88SC. The sword, wreathed in a black mist and pulsating with blood smeared across its surface, slowly rose from the dirt, having finished its meal, and turned in the air as it was about to seek its next target. The ego of your soul weapon, the Sword of New Beginnings, is close to awakening. Continue to feed it to awaken it fully. Close to awakening. Great. Who should I do next? Ashlock mused as he spread out his spiritual sight. In it, he could see blazing balls of metal chi that were the fleeing silver spires. Ah, this guy changed direction and seems the closest to the airships in the distance. Desolation chi buzzed around the sword for a moment before it was pulled through a rift, leaving the mortal farmers confused and scared. Ashlock's view blurred as he arrived at the new location alongside his sword. The target was within striking range. Using telekinesis as before, Ashlock directed the sword to fly into the cultivator's back. Somehow anticipating the quick strike, they twisted their body. While skillfully dodging the blade, their spatial ring flashed, and a metal net appeared in the sword's path. Like a fish caught in a net, the sword became entangled. What is this? Ashlock thought with amusement. Do you think you can catch my sword with a mere net? It's covered in desolation. Chi. His amusement faded as he noticed the metal net was, in fact, not rusting away. How? He looked closer and saw dulled spirit stones embedded in the net's links. They were quickly turning dark, and cracks formed on their surfaces, yet the net remained intact. The metal links were also heavily engraved with chi absorption and redistribution circuits, which were quite impressive. Ashlock had never encountered such an artifact before. Is this some sort of chi restriction net? Is this used for catching monsters alive? Whatever this net was for, it had likely been costly to make. Ashlock decided killing these people wasn't worth it anymore, even if the demon sword was about to awaken an ego. He wanted to get his sword back. To his confusion, his sword wasn't responding to his demands. His telekinesis has also been cut off. It was one of the reasons he usually wielded his sword with an ethereal root to avoid his spatial control from being disrupted, but he had wrongly thought that wouldn't be as much of a concern with desolation chi, which countered other chi types. Oh, you bastard. Ashlock warped the space around the metal net, but the chi-absorbing circuits made it difficult to get a good telekinetic grip. The cultivator hastily threw a metal line that magnetically anchored onto the net and connected it to their sword. They then kept flying toward the ships in the distance without even looking back, dragging his soul weapon with them. Shit, Ashlock cursed. He couldn't believe his soul weapon was being kidnapped by some stupid net of all things. The escaping cultivator was burning through their chi reserves to increase their speed, and they were rapidly approaching the edge of his roots. It had all gone so wrong. He had felt like an executioner, able to decide who lived and died on a whim by controlling a nearly indestructible sword. Yet he had gotten ahead of himself and paid the price. Now, he had seconds at best to retrieve his sword before the cultivator left the range of his roots. Not long enough to return to Red Vine Peak and call upon Larry or head into one of the mystic realms and ask for a sect member's assistance. He didn't even have time to open his evil eye or activate his Abyssal Devourer A skill. Almost everything in his arsenal required time for setup or for the opponent to be near a proxy through which he could use skills. In the little time he had, there was only really one solution: to use his chi. However, with the Silver Spire ships fast approaching and how big of a waste this would be, he really didn't want to resort to this. You pushed me too hard, little cultivator. Ashlock's soul, which was many mountain ranges away, pulsed. Birds for 100 miles around Red Vine Peak felt the disturbance and fled into the air, letting off harrowed cries. Desolation Chi, carrying the full weight of his inner world and 5th-level nascent soul realm strength, surged down his ethereal roots. Reality trembled and groaned in its path. The air thickened with dread as the ground below the cultivator fractured, and from its depths, a tide of desolation Chi erupted upwards. A wall of darkness that radiated malice and promised ruin to those who dared to cross stopped the cultivator in his tracks. The walled-off cultivator tried to desperately strike at it with his sword to carve a path, but the desolation Chi violently lashed out and reduced the weapon to dust in seconds. The cultivator retreated and began to fly upwards as if trying to crest the top of the wall. Ashlock answered by compressing the space to increase the gravity many times. The cultivator gradually slowed down until they could barely make any progress, no matter how brightly they burned their star core. Blood leaked from the corner of the man's mouth as he desperately tried to escape Ashlock's clutches. You foolishly tried to steal something while in the range of my roots, Ashlock chuckled as he slashed at reality with blades of desolation Chi, tearing the man apart. He then overwhelmed the net with desolation Chi, causing every gem to explode, followed by freeing his soul weapon from its clutches. Your soul weapon, the sword of new beginnings, is awakening the ego of slaughter. Ha! Ashlock cheered. It had been worth the close call. He opened a portal below the falling sword and the remaining pieces of the cultivator. Thank you for my sword back. A large golden wood airship suddenly appeared out of thin air above the demon's sword. A man standing on the ship's brow had eyes of pure gold that radiated with ungodly power. Reality crackled around the man like shattered glass as he pointed at the sword, freezing it in place above the rift Ashlock had made. Desolation Chi. The man noted. His voice was calm and tranquil, yet it reached all. A rather sinister branch of spatial Chi. What is it you seek to destroy, little one? The cultivator slowly looked upright at Ashlock. Ashlock tried to mobilize his desolation Chi, infused with spatial Tao, to regain control of the net holding his soul weapon, but it felt like he was a child trying to steal a toy from an adult. This cultivator's control over spatial Tao was absolute, meaning he had to be a monarch realm spatial cultivator. There was only one force on the 9th layer of creation that would have a spatial monarch realm cultivator, the Celestial Empire. But what was a powerhouse like this doing in Argentum? You seem too weak to be the soul eater that has been plaguing these lands, the man said, his golden eyes narrowing. So, who are you? Ashlock obviously had no plans to answer. Instead, he sent the wall of desolation Chi to attack the ship. The monarch cultivator raised his hand to block it. His glowing golden eyes widened slightly as he failed to fully stop its advance. Such a dense
inner world. Yet your chi has the density of a nascent soul realm cultivator, the man remarked as spatial chi crackled along his skin and to his fingers, and your level of comprehension of some Tao surpasses mine. How curious. His head turned, and he looked at Ashlock once more, to meet a hidden powerhouse out here in the wilderness. The world truly is vast. I really should get out more. I will be taking your sword for now, but perhaps we can trade pointers sometime soon. I will await for you in Argentum. Ashlock didn't even have a chance to reply as the golden wooden ship, alongside his soul weapon, vanished with a thunderclap as air filled the vacuum left behind. Yet despite their separation, Ashlock could feel the location of his soul weapon and also something else. Its intense hunger. Ashlock tuned it out and calmed his anger. He had gotten ahead of himself and forgotten his weaknesses as a tree. However, it was the Monarch Realm Cultivator who made the gravest of mistakes. He had dared to steal his first ever birthday gift from Stella. The soul eater that Monarch Realm Cultivator seemed so concerned about is likely Nixalia. Ashlock dropped the wall of desolation and retreated for now. He may have lost this battle, but the war was yet to come. His roots were fast approaching Argentum, and he had a few allies to call upon. One girl in particular that he was sure wouldn't take the news of the lost weapon too well.